my... Yeah, you're good. Just make sure...
Ah, here
Yep.
we are.
Yep.
Hallelujah.
There you
All
go.
right.
All
Cool.
right. We have sorted out technical difficulties. Can everyone hear us at the same, like close to the same volume?
Hello. Testing.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to put the link in the chat in just a second. I'm going to send it to him as well so he can post it in his chat. And we'll pin it for people to come up and talk. I'm just going to address some of these comments that I got because it's always wacky stuff right at the beginning. Hey, Mickey, imagine being named Ash. But your son's name is Ezra, which is also my name. So that's cool. And I wanted to address this. Why do I platform him when he's anti-Christian and more pro-Muslim than pro-Christian? Do you have any comments about being more pro-Muslim than being pro-Christian?
I don't know where they got that one from. I've never said such a thing. I'm also not anti-Christian. I just have
You
some
just don't think it's true?
disagreements with Christianity.
Yeah. Well,
I
and the
don't
reason,
think everything about it is true.
from my perspective, if we look at history,
But also the
it
whole
goes,
platforming thing is
yeah. Well, it goes Rabbinic Judaism, Karaite or Torah only, and then Catholic. That's the natural progression that we've seen throughout history, so I'm not too concerned. All right. So we're going to get into this in a sec. First of all, I'm going to pray quickly. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Lord, give us wisdom in these discussions. Temper our tempers. Keep us on a straight path. Guard our tongues from anything that would lead us to condemnation rather than glorifying your holy name. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay. Let's get this going. I'm going to put where's my link? I'm also going to send it to you.
Is it the same link or a different link?
It's going to be the same thing.
Should I just use the one I have?
Yeah, you use the one you have. Post that in your chat as well and pin it.
Okay. Let's do it.
Why do I still have this frog on my screen? How's everyone doing? Don't forget, I read super chats. And if you want to support my work at Buy Me a Coffee, it's in the description for the video. I also put the baby registry for our baby that's coming soon. So there's that.
Congratulations.
We already have a caller. Let's see how this goes.
Awesome.
Max, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
You were on the other day, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, welcome back. I think we had a very productive conversation last time, so glad to see you back. This is going to be a little bit different because this is not about Christianity. Did I lose count of the Omer? Yeah, I lost count. Yeah, so this is a little bit different format this time. I'm going to be doing my regular streams probably on Mondays. I decided to have Israel on. We had talked about this. This is more specifically about whether or not Rabbinic Judaism's claims are authentic, not related to any other thing other than, I guess in your case, Israel, Torah-only Judaism. But is rabbinic authority authentic? Are rabbinic claims authentic? Is the oral Torah as cited by the rabbis authentic? So that's kind of the format here. And I'm going to try to stay out of it for a little bit. I'll probably throw in my 2 cents from time to time, but I'm mostly going to just keep an eye on things.
Yeah,
Fine.
sure. Sounds good.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. By the way, I spoke with you, Israel. I spoke with you. I had a debate with you on your channel. That was like
I
maybe
know.
6 months
I
ago.
recognize your voice. You're Yisrael, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, we have
Yeah.
one thing in
Oh.
common. We have the same name.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to speak about, in Orthodox Judaism, we say that Judaism goes based on the mother, not the father. So if the mom is Jewish, the kids are Jewish. If the father is Jewish or not Jewish doesn't make a difference as long as the mom is Jewish. I'm assuming you disagree and you think it goes based on the father. Is that correct?
Yeah, so first of all, there's no Torah source that it goes based off of the mother. The only Torah source regarding lineage is that the father's lineage is prioritized in terms of tribal identity. As for the people that are welcome in the nation of Israel, it actually doesn't even boil down to blood relationship. It boils down to whether you follow the Torah.
So you're saying if you are born to a Jewish parents, but you don't follow the Torah, so you're not Jewish?
Oh, you're Jewish, but you may not be welcome in the people because there are penalties in the Torah for people that don't follow the law, like being cut off from the people if you're not circumcised, or if you don't afflict yourself on Yom Kippur, or if you sleep with a woman on her period. Just a few things that come off the top of my mind. There's also the death penalty for certain things, breaking certain Torah commandments. So really, fundamentally, everyone is under the law of the Torah if you want to be part of Israel. Now, people that are born into Judaism obviously have they're kind of born obligated. I see it that way, and God opens the door for the Jewish people to return at any point in history.
Yeah. So I would say that in the Torah we could see that Judaism goes based on the mother. I could give you, for example, in Exodus chapter 21, verse at the beginning, verses 4-5, speaks about a slave, a Hebrew slave. So it says over there in the verse that if the Hebrew slaves become enslaved, is being bought by himself, after 6 years, he's being released by himself. If he comes with the wife, he leaves with the wife. But the verse after that comes and says that if his master is giving him a lady to marry off to make children, then
Mm-hmm.
when after 6 years he leaves, but the children and the kids stay with the master. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why do I say that from here we learn that uh, Judaism goes based on the mother? Because here we see a scenario where a Hebrew slave, which is the father, is
Mm-hmm.
being is having kids with a woman, which is a slave. Now, according to the Torah, which we can see in a few verses, a Jewish lady, we'll call her Hebrew lady, is the only way for her to become a slave is only if her father sells her to a master, and the master has only two options: either to marry her or marry her to his child. If not,
Mm-hmm.
he has to let her go. So obviously, here
Mm-hmm.
when he gives that slave woman to the man, she's not Jewish because he's not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to do so. So we can see she's not a Jewish slave.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids, after he leaves, the kids staying, which is another
Mm-hmm.
issue if you want to say they're Jewish. They can't be Jewish because the only option for a Jewish slave to become a slave is either you can see in I'll tell you the verses in Leviticus 25 verse 39. If he doesn't have money and he stole something, then the Beit Din sells him as a slave to pay the money. Secondly, the second option is if he doesn't have money, so he's allowed to sell himself to become a slave. And in these two options, he's being released after 6 years, or the Yovel, which I forgot how to say it in English, whatever comes first.
Jubilee. Jubilee.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
here we see that the kids with the mom stay as slaves for the master. They're not getting released after 6 years, so they're not Jewish. So if the father is Jewish, the kids should be Jewish according to you. We see in this case the mom is not Jewish, the father is Jewish, and the kids are not Jewish because they're staying as slaves forever with the master.
Mm. Yeah, I see it. It's a good point. I see it's an interesting source. I mean, obviously, you'd
Yeah.
have to contend with Numbers chapter 1, verse 2, which says that tribal identity goes based off of the father. But your point is that the children are not considered uh, they're not considered children of Israel because there's another verse that says that the children of Israel cannot be slaves. Right? That's your
Forever,
point.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Can
So
I ask
yeah,
quickly before
yeah.
you continue, just
Mhm.
Max? So my question would be, why, if that's a verse that would prove that matrilineal descent for Jews, why is that never what the Talmud cites as the proof for that ruling?
Right. So we see in the Talmud that there's no how do you say no debate about if it comes from the father or from the mom Judaism.
I know there's no
Everyone
debate, but
agrees.
the
No, I
source that's
agree with
cited, I
you.
was just reading it today,
All right,
doesn't mention that at all.
right. I agree with you. They mention a different source, which to me doesn't really make sense a lot. That source, but we do agree that there was no debate on if it comes from the mom or from the father. They had a tradition that it comes from the mom. Now,
I
yes, they
think
quoted a different.
if the discussion here is whether or not the oral Torah is valid or not, and you start by saying that it makes no sense how they ruled on it, I think you may have
No,
conceded.
yeah, it sounds no. I'm
Yeah.
saying the verse. Yeah, so the way it works, basically, the oral law, the way it works is in the Talmud is a
There's no
school of smachta.
there's no contention on this point though. That's the important factor here.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I got it from this verse. Rashi mentions it a little bit. He doesn't really go to depth, like I said. But from him, I got the concept and I developed it forward. So yeah, it doesn't say it in the Talmud, this verse. I agree. Yeah. But that's
Mhm.
something that I figured out. Yeah, I realized it.
Well,
So
again,
yeah,
what
I just wanted
you're
to.
saying is no. Again, first of all, as Ash pointed out, you've come up with a better proof than the Talmud came up with, which is more further evidence that every single one of us has the right and the ability to read the Torah, interpret it, and understand it for ourselves. That being said, to the source that you bring up, it is a specific case with slavery. So the idea that that's applicable across the board is already questionable. But if you recall in my original statement, what I said is the final determining factor of who is welcome as part of the nation is someone that keeps the Torah, right? So even within this niche category of slavery, you would point out that in the case of the master giving him a wife, right? And this is specifically in the case where the master gives him the wife. So the wife is uh, owned by the master, and so the kids just go to the master. And again, I'm saying, good point. You managed to bring a better proof than the Talmud. That being said, it doesn't change the the key element here, which is that what does it require to be part of the nation of Israel? Belief in one God and following the Torah.
Yeah, I would agree, but I would say that I don't know. Maybe you also agree with me at that point. Maybe I misunderstood you, but basically, if you are born to a Jewish mom, then you are Jewish and you're obligated to keep the Shabbos and do all the mitzvahs, right? To keep the Torah. If you are not born to a Jewish mom, okay, you would say as a father, whatever, to a Jewish parents, then you're not obligated to begin with. Now, there's an option for you to convert, right? To be a ger and to take upon yourself these mitzvahs, and then you are obligated. But if you are born Jewish, you're automatically obligated. Now, you trying to say, I don't know if I understood it correctly. You're trying to say that if, let's say, someone stopped keeping the mitzvahs, they're not obligated anymore because he was cut off?
Oh, I think he's still obligated, but he's cut off.
Yeah, so I would agree. He's cut off. He's still
Mhm.
obligated. He's cut off. Means after he dies, he will be cut off and be punished for that unless he repents. Yeah, I would agree to that point.
Well, I
Can I
mean, that
ask
was an
Max?
assertion there that it's
Do you
after
think that
death. That's not what the Torah says.
do you think Max that in reality, if we actually look at the entirety of Scripture, that Gentiles are as obligated to this covenant? They just are not born into it in the same way.
So I don't see it that way. I see it in the way that because you can see, for example, in the Torah itself, you can see two verses. There's more than that, but two that contradict each other. One verse says, "Torah achat tiyeh lachem laezach velager." So basically, it says the convert and the citizen, which refers to the Israelites, will have the same Torah. Different verse, it says if you have a nevela, which is a dead animal, which basically, according to Torah, you're not allowed to eat dead animals. You have to slaughter it or whatever, somehow kill it, right? You should give to your ger, to your convert. Now, what do you mean? But if the convert has the same, has to have, according to the first verse, has to have the same Torah, so he's not allowed to eat it. So obviously, there's two types of ger here. There's a ger that is obligated like us, which he decided to take upon himself the Torah and all the mitzvahs, all the commandments. There's another ger which he decides to live within you, which we call in Rabbinic Judaism, we call it ger toshav, which he decides to live within you. He's not obligated in the whole Torah. We could see the second verse, but still he can worship idols, he can't do whatever he wants, right? But you can see also in Deuteronomy, when they say when you go to the nations, you have to kick them out, right? Because they worship all the idols. Not to worship idols with you. So they have different set of commandments. Now, exactly what they are could be debatable, but they're not for sure like us.
Yeah. So again, you're bringing the two singular scenarios in which there is a differentiation between the law for a ger, a sojourner, and a native. That's regarding eating a carcass and regarding the ability to own them as a slave beyond 6 years. Right. Now, I just want to point out
Mm-hmm.
to stipulate this point that in the Torah, slavery is actually always consensual slavery, as in if you kidnap someone to sell them, it's punishable by death. If a slave runs away from his master, you are not allowed to return him to his master. So the slavery here is really pretty much someone joining among the household of a person. And so you can read the case here in Exodus 21 is that this woman is already part of the man's household. She is part of that house. And it's a specific law about slavery that just because he's marrying her off to his Hebrew slave, that doesn't transfer to his name. But if he was a free man, and this is something to consider, is that he was a slave during those 6 years. So he doesn't really have his freedom, right? But if a free Israelite marries a woman, then in fact, you can argue that he would take on, his children would take on his name because he's a free man. So this entire scenario that you're bringing is within the context of slavery. And already that it has a different category. So I don't think that's applicable to every other scenario.
Right. So you went back to my first point, basically, right?
Just quickly to get this back on track a little bit, because I think we got stuck on a niche topic here also. I think if I want to clarify quickly, Israel's point is not that you can't come to some of these conclusions that the Talmud comes to or that the oral tradition comes to, which I would disagree that those are valid things to hold people to anyways, but as he probably would as well. But the question is, why would anyone take the authority of the rabbis on these matters and the claims that they make about how the Torah was transmitted to them?
Yeah,
so we can address.
Yeah. I have just a few minutes, so I'll try to shortly touch upon that. I just want to finish this last point. So I was speaking, it's Israel. It sounded like you went to my first point. The second point I made was about there's two types of converts. So
yeah, I don't necessarily. No, I don't. I don't agree. Two things you said were rabbinic. First of all, that cutting off from the people means after death. The Torah doesn't say that. Second of all, that there are two kinds of gerim, two kinds of sojourners. I think you are correct. There are two. As to my knowledge, there are two laws in the Torah where the law for a ger is different than that of a ezrach. A sojourner is different than a native. That's with the ability to own them as slaves, because God says the children of Israel are my slaves, therefore they cannot be slaves to anyone else. And regarding eating a carcass, those are the two entirely different differentiations in the law. So other than that, it is one law.
Right. No, so what I was saying, the point is that there's one verse says you're supposed to have one law, the convert in you. You're supposed to have one Torah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there are two deviations from that rule in the Torah. There are two places in which the law differs for gerim, for sojourners, but the whole point is that there is one law outside of that.
Right. So my point is,
you cannot steal from a sojourner. You cannot commit adultery. Every other Shabbat, every other law in the Torah applies to sojourners, except for these two niche topics that you decided to bring up. That doesn't change the fact that they should be welcomed and loved as part of the people, and that ultimately what it takes to be part of the people is to observe the law.
100%. I agree. Yeah. Okay. So Ash, back to the point you wanted to talk about. So what was your question again about?
The question is, why would anyone, regardless if you think the rabbis sometimes have interesting or potentially correct things to say, and specifically here addressing Israel, because he's also arguing a completely different point than I am. Why would you take the authority of the rabbis as legitimate? Their semicha, which even according to rabbis of the Talmud, the smicha of Maimonides is not legitimate. I mean, but regardless of that, why would you take the rabbinic authority and claims to how that authority originated as true? Why do you believe that? Like, what reason do you have to believe that?
Yeah, so there's 2 points. One point is that we see that they believed in what they preached. Now, I know in Christianity they claim differently. I think so. That's what I heard. But basically, we can see, like in the Talmud, some of the Amoraim and Tanaim in the Mishnah, we have stories of them that they really followed what they preached. They were keeping the Torah, the Shabbos. They were doing all these things. So now,
not, just because somebody believes in what they're doing doesn't mean it's true. That's
there's been a lot of pagan.
Unless they're the ones that could originate. Unless they're the ones that could originate the claim. Meaning, if I'm the one who got revelation from God, and then I give you a false revelation of that and I can know it's not true, then you would expect what I actually know to be true to guide what I'm doing. But if it's simply a belief based on no personal firsthand evidence, there's no reason why you would assume that their personal belief in it makes it true. Otherwise, any religion is valid.
All
Of
right. So
course.
my,
Yeah.
my, my, my point was that basically they believed in what they preach, means they thought it's the truth. Now, if it was the truth or not, we need to still prove. But they did believe in what they preached. So they preached a certain way. There's oral Torah. They preach their oral Torah is correct, right? Now we say that there is a generation to generation uh, chain up to Moses, right? We have names. Yeah, you can disagree with it, but we have names that go smicha. Smicha basically does not mean like physically you have to put the hands on someone's head or anoint him, and that's why he passed down the Torah, how you say the teachings with him. It has to be basically student and a teacher, student and teacher. That we have from today till Moses. That's our claim. Now the smicha, the physical smicha, was cut off like 2,000 years ago. I don't know exactly when it was, when there was a lot of persecution. So we don't have today
No,
rabbanim that
you're
are
you're
being,
missing a point of
yeah.
the claim though, because the claim is not simply what type of smicha. The claim is whether or not a Sanhedrin would be legitimate also,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
why
if they have the
Sanhedrin wouldn't
same
be
authority,
legitimate? Yeah, so
right? Because
basically in the
because
Torah
the
it
rabbis,
says,
the Amoraim and onwards, do not have the same authority as the Tanaim and earlier, according to the rabbinic claim.
yeah, so basically the way it works is, yeah, the Sanhedrin had more power. They had because they had smicha, right? They had more power. Now the Sanhedrin, before it stopped existing, they set a rule. The head of the Sanhedrin set a rule that from now on, he knew it's not going to continue for long. Said from now on, when you have a dispute, you rule by the majority. So when the rabbis have a dispute, you rule by the majority. So that's what the Talmud usually does. Usually rules by the majority, and that's how the Rishonim, Achonim, that's what they do based on the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin that got the authority for the Torah gave us the authority to rule by majority today.
Okay. I mean, there's so many points there to address, which is, first of all, the Gemara, the Talmud itself says in Eruvin that you should be more careful with the words of the rabbis than with the words of the Torah, because anyone who goes against the words of the rabbis is deserving of death. Right? So the rabbis immediately took a power grab way beyond what was ever allotted to them. In the Torah itself, it says multiple times over and over again. One source that pops off my mind, Deuteronomy 30:10, you shall follow the words that are written in this book of the Torah. Right? The Torah itself is the written Torah. It's defined that way by the Torah itself. This is the written word. You must follow what is written without adding or subtracting. To the extent that there are judges and court systems that adjudicate law, as Ash pointed out, the Sanhedrin is a completely non-biblical concept. But the bottom line is that they don't have the authority to preach a Torah that is not what is written in that book. So again, the mere fact that this whole concept of oral Torah goes against what the written Torah itself says. You should follow what is written in this book of the Torah.
Can I,
Yeah, correct.
for a
So
second? Can we let's steel man for a second, Israel? So, um, would you agree, Israel, that if the rabbis are the ruling authority of Judaism today, that they do in fact have the authority to judge court cases?
Yeah, Torah cases using the written Torah as a way to come to conclusions. Oh, and ruling by majority is not the Torah's standard. The Torah says don't rule by majority for the wrong case. So if you're always ruling by majority, how do you ever know what's right or wrong?
yeah, so I would say the wrong case would be considered if you, for example, yes, for example, go specific like the Torah says, don't eat pig. They say by majority you should eat pig. That's for sure wrong, right? But if they come to something that there's disagreement and the Torah does not speak about it, right? For example, in Shabbos, it says you should keep the Shabbos. Now, to keep and shoot it, and you shouldn't violate it. Now, what's considered a violation? There's different disagreements. And there's new, like for example, electricity. Also, there's different disagreement. Is electricity considered fire or not? Then there's disagreement. Then you rule based on majority. Something that the Torah says explicitly does not have to be ruled by majority.
Yeah, again, that's a non-Torah concept. You can't just go for majority. It's not a blanket authority out here to tell people what to do. Like the only time in the Torah where there's even a court that has the final word on matters of dispute is a court that exists in the place that God chooses. So we explicitly need a place where God rests his name in order to even have a court of the caliber that you're talking about. What we're dealing with today is a scattered, exiled people with no prophecy, with no actual centralized authority, with no Torah observant nation. Their judgment is as good as mine. Just because you take a bunch of Orthodox rabbis and compile their opinions and judge the majority, which, by the way, I mean, it's usually just like single authorities saying these things, but majority does not rule. Truth rules, and the written Torah is the final arbiter of truth.
Yeah, yeah. So just like in the regular world, right? You have courts in each city, and then you have the Supreme Court, which is if the regular court cannot decide or decide something, you can go and appeal with the Supreme Court. The same concept we have also, I think it's in the Numbers, Book of Numbers.
I
It
want to
says you should
give
have.
one more minute on this one just because there's a bunch of people waiting. So I want to start wrapping up this one, Max. But again, I appreciate the very respectful dialogue. I think you're also better at it than most people that come up here. So thank you.
No,
Can I
thank you.
say one more thing? Is that regarding the way regular court systems work? I think you have to understand the Torah is not here to be compared to other justice systems. The Torah is the word of God laid out in a very clear set of laws that you may not add or subtract to. So when rabbis are out here just making things up and making up laws and making up rulings, I don't think that they have that authority.
Yeah. So to close it off, so what I'm saying is also the Torah. What I say now, the Torah also says, and I can show you where. But also without the Torah, logically, it makes sense. Like you can see, there's regular courts and Supreme Court. In the Torah, it says you should have judges in each city. And then plus it says in the place which I would choose, you will have the, it's called also judges, what I say, whatever. But what's the difference between a regular judges in a regular city and where the God will choose that place? It's like a difference between a regular court.
It's magnitude of the case and on how much of a level it affects the nation.
Yeah, exactly. So the way we also say it in the Talmud, they bring it down that each city had court. If that court did not know how to rule out, it went to the main court. Not the main, not the Sanhedrin. I had another court in Jerusalem, which was the bigger of the rabbis. If they couldn't rule, it will go to the Sanhedrin, which we call Sanhedrin, whatever you can call it any name, which was in the Beit HaMikdash, right, over there, which was the Supreme Court. We can see the same concept also in regular life, right? We have Supreme Court, regular courts. So that's
gonna wrap up, Max.
Okay.
Okay,
no
thank you
problem.
for coming on. I hear there's a rabbi in the chat that wants to come on. Rachmiel, in just one moment. Max, thank you so much. Rachmiel, one moment before I bring you up. For anyone in the chat who's a little bit lost with the Hebrew lingo, with Jewish speak, I do have a video I'm working on that's going to be coming out in the next few days, hopefully. I want to show you guys the thumbnail. Can I do this? You guys like that? Anyway. Yeah. Let's get rid of that. How do I get rid of that? Yeah, that's going to be a video coming out in the next few days, hopefully, if I have time to finish it up. Jewish speak for Goyims. All right. We have Rachmiel. I don't know if you've ever been on here before. Just speak so we can hear you. Make sure you're... Oh, no, that's not Rachmiel. Sorry, 1 second.
Is it me?
It was you, but I'm going back to Rachmiel because I told him he'd come up next. Rachmiel, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank God.
Are you
hope you're all well. So someone brought this, I don't know you two, but someone who I teach Torah brought it to my attention and said, hey, you should go and speak. And from the little I could gather, so you both left the yeshivish world, the Orthodox world, and I think that we share a similar path, and that I found that to be untenable. And yet the solution that I found is obviously different from you both. Now, one of the things I want to say is that, like in the title on YouTube versus, like on the thumbnail, it says Rabbinic Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, and you've conflated the two. So I want to talk about Rabbinic Judaism, and the framework which I'm speaking is a very old school Sephardi Maimonidean framework, and it's very different from Orthodoxy. And the reason why I want to is because I agree with a lot of the points you're saying. I don't agree with your conclusions or how you get there, but I agree with a lot of the points because you're right. Orthodoxy, or we could talk about Ashkenazi Orthodoxy, and we're not far off the mark, even though most Sephardim, I suppose, are Ashkenazi nowadays, essentially, in the way they think. You're right. They're wrong. They're just blatantly wrong, including things as simple as the oral law. And it was called out a long time ago already. And it has to do with Iger Chiriragon and a bunch of other things. Like, when was the oral Torah written down? They think that literally was not written down until the Mishnah. That's not true. There's plenty of evidence that they did. It just wasn't published. It wasn't published in public, but everyone had their own little writings. It's neither here nor there. All I wanted to say is that I agree with you that your interlocutors are usually wrong, but I don't think that both of the conclusions that you came to are right either. So, when you look at Harambam, when you look at Maimonides, I mean, if you read his Hakdama very
Can I
carefully,
interrupt you just for a moment?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I bring you on the screen, or would you rather remain hidden?
I prefer not to be on video. I'm not looking my best.
Okay.
I've got a bit of a flu at the moment down under. It's that season. Anyway, so the main point I would say is that people don't read it correctly. So at the very beginning in the Hakdama, he says, "A Torah zu Torah shebichtav, v'mitzvah zu Torah sheba'al peh." That the Torah, this is the written law, and the mitzvah, the commandment, this is the oral law. Now, people just gloss over this. When he says that mitzvah is the oral law, what he's actually telling you is that the whatever number you give it, 613 or whatever, and it's not clear that Maimonides even believes that there's just 613, but he had to work with it because it's the number that everyone else was working with. He seems to view that the rabbinic speak of 613 was a rhetorical point, not a literal point. Of course, you could put to Sifrei, where at one point it says there's 300 mitzvot aseh, things like that. It was more rhetorical to talk about the Ramach Evarim, the Shesagidim, but the point was that the mitzvah is Torah Sheba'al Peh. In other words, it is the Bet Din Hagadol in every generation up until the end of the Bet Din Hagadol, and I will address the points the previous speaker made because he erred, like, in representing the rabbinic tradition, but those points. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Yeah. So those mitzvot are actually decided. The Bet Din Hagadol tells us what is and isn't a mitzvah in the Torah. I'll give you an example. I could make a reasonable argument.
Before we get to examples of that, though, so
yeah,
I just want to clarify a few points. So you believe that there is an oral Torah that goes back to Moses. Is that correct?
No, not quite. Not quite. Okay. There's a system. There's an oral law system. The content changes.
Okay. So the question that I have, and we can probably cut a little bit of time here because I don't want it to become no offense here. I just don't want it to become a lecture on your version of Judaism.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. So how would you conclude that one ought be doing certain things to be in a correct relationship with God based on this system that has the system, but not an actual God-given command? Because I'd say that the rabbis are actually of today are more consistent to at least hold the standard of saying it's a God-given command, that we need to parse out how we understand it, but it is God-given. Because otherwise, how would you have a truth claim about what you ought follow in that rationalistic determination? So because
both of you actually, but you especially, are underlined by a assumption that's not borne out by the historic record, and that is that we are, quote unquote, a religion. There's no word in Hebrew for religion. It doesn't exist. We're a nation. We're an ummah. And that word both exists in Hebrew and in Aramaic and in Arabic, obviously. We're Am Yisrael. So we're a nation. We're not a religion. The term religion comes from Europe, from a Christian Europe, and it only accurately defines Christianity. No religion has a law of torts in the same way Judaism does, for that matter, Islam, which is an attempt to build a nation. Didn't really work. But it was an attempt to get rid of ethnic separations, but we were already an ethnic group, and so the Torah is our constitution. It is a constitution, and therefore, and that constitution has divine authority. It cannot be abrogated. It cannot be changed. But the definition of the terms within, yes, it is comparable to the Supreme Court of a country like the United States. The terms within are definable by in our case, what is a mixture between the judiciary and the legislature, which is a Bet Din Hagadol, also known as Sanhedrin. Now, and they clearly do this. Like, they've clearly done this. Even within Nach, you find examples of this happening, right? Later on in Nach, you find that the leaders of the time had defined something that was earlier on. For example, how in Ezra, how they define how to fulfill the mitzvot of Sukkah, and how you build those booths. And then later on, later generations redefined as they are entitled to do, because that is what the pasuk says. Well, I won't say the whole thing, but when you go into the Kohanim, to the priests, the Levites, and the judge that shall be in those days, and you shall do whatever they tell you. And now what happens is, like, the Orthodox are wrong in the sense that they think that this applies to all rabbis. It clearly doesn't. It applies to the Bet Din Hagadol. It applies to Musmachim. And then there's an argument about, well, how does the Talmud have authority? That's a long and complicated topic, probably beyond the purview of what I want to get at. But essentially, from the Maimonidean point of view, rabbinic authority ends at the end of the Talmud, as the Talmud itself says, Rav Ina Rav Ashi Sof Hora'ah, that they are the end of binding rulings. Now, they're the end of binding rulings, as Harambam says, because there was no further any centralization. It became too decentralized to run an effective nation. So as a nation, not a religion, it's a nation under God. We fulfill his law by being true and loyal to his covenant. But I mean, like I said, I could easily make an argument from the Torah that there's a consistent commandment to conquer the land of Israel as Joshua was commanded, but it's imperative that it be conquered, right? So, like, if I was going to go down that line, okay, well, go pick up a gun and start shooting up the West Bank. You know what I mean?
I'm not understanding how this pertains to the topic at hand.
Well, it does, because I'm defining terms, and the terms are that the rabbis have authority.
Okay.
They do have
So
authority.
I do want to say there's two other people waiting in the green room behind you. So if we're going to spend about 8 minutes now defining terms, we're going to have a problem. So the question is, why ought somebody follow this? It's not Rabbinic Judaism, because you've said it's not, and it clearly isn't. Why
No, it's Rabbinic Judaism. It's not Orthodox. It's not Orthodox. This is the true Rabbinic Judaism.
So the question is this. Do you believe that somebody is violating Torah law by eating chicken parmesan?
Yes, but indirectly. They're violating Torah law because of the Torah commandment of that you have to follow the legislation, valid legislation, obviously.
Okay, but
not invalid legislation.
But where does it say that the authority is legislation and not judgment?
Because it says very clearly, Ki yafli mimcha davar. Ki yafli mimcha davar. Yafli means it's something that's unknown to you. It's an unknown area. It's an unlegislated area. It's not just judging a new thing, right? So people, they misread because they read the next part. Ben dam ledam, ben din ledin, ben nega lenaga.
Is the rabbi's job to make up new laws?
It's the Bet Din Hagadol's.
It's their
within
job
their
to make
authority.
up new laws, or to adjudicate in cases of doubt in the pre-existing law. Because my Torah says you shall not add or subtract to these commandments.
Yes, and we're not, because we're not changing the text of the Torah. We're not adding or subtracting to the words of the Torah.
How convenient! You're just creating a bunch of binding law. You're creating a bunch of binding law that's not in the Torah, based off of your legislative abilities.
Because ki yafli mimcha davar. Do you know what the word yafli means?
Yeah, I do. If something is beyond you in judgment, right? Then you
shall
go.
No. It doesn't mean beyond. It does not mean beyond.
Okay,
it doesn't.
Again, you want to sit here obsessing over little terms, all right? I'll use your word. It's hidden from you.
He's claimed to be based on the written law. You have to know what Hebrew means. You have to know what Hebrew means. Let's start with what Hebrew means.
It's hidden from you that you can't eat hidden.
It doesn't mean hidden. It doesn't mean hidden. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean hidden.
Give your definition. I don't care. What's your definition?
So the question is this:
unknown.
If you have a case where somebody comes to the judgment of the court, and somebody has done something that violates an already existing precept, and there's confusion about whether or not this violates an existing precept, I can, to an extent, see how there might be some aspect of interpretation, but not to create a new binding law. So when it says in the Torah not to cook a baby goat in the milk of its mother, how do you arrive at a binding law that tells you can't have chicken and cheese?
So I agree.
And further, that you would then violate the law of loving your neighbor as you love yourself to yell at somebody or accost somebody or kick them out of their mashgiach job because they had dairy within 2 hours of eating that chicken.
Yeah.
Where do you
Well,
get to
obviously,
that? Where you can violate a Torah
well,
precept over this rabbinic interpretation?
well, look. You're obviously referring to something that happened in your life, and or in someone's life, and I think that's terrible. And the
Actually,
Orthodox have,
not in my life.
well, it sounds.
I know of somebody that it happened to because I
All
worked
right,
as a
it's
mashgiach.
someone's
But
life, and it is terrible. Orthodoxy, they're just, it's terrible, and it's its own topic, obviously.
right, but they're more
But I
consistent
agree
because
with
you're
you on the
making the
first
claim that
part.
you ought to do
Yes,
this, but there's no consequence of it. You're saying it's an ought claim of something. How do you follow God's law? But you're not saying that anyone should be obligated to any kind of punishment. So the rabbis who are actually abusing
that's
this
not what
other
I said.
person are technically more consistent in their claims than you
No,
are.
no, I don't think they are. I don't think they are. But on the first point that you said, when you're coming
And
to judge a new
we're gonna
situation,
wrap this one up in about
I
3 minutes,
agree with you.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
again,
okay. So I
all
agree
I'd
with
like
you.
to say is that Maimonides and your little Maimonides worship cult, it does not constitute the law of God. He is an independent rabbi from Egypt who wrote down his opinions. He is not an authority over the Jewish people. The rabbis and the Talmud are not the authority. How convenient! With the ending of the Talmud, all rulings have ended. No, the reality is the Jewish people, the people of Israel, are bound by the Torah, the written Torah, the Word of God. There is no centralized authority, and the authority is not there to just make up laws ad nauseum. Where
So,
do you
so, so,
ever
so
put
you
a
just you
stop?
just you just erased V'alachtem el hakohanim el halevim vel
No,
hashofet asher
I
yeh b'yom
didn't.
hahem. You did, you did.
Where
But
is,
but
excuse
but
me,
but but, but he gave me three
where is
minutes.
the
He gave me
where
three
is
minutes. I
the
wanted to answer his question. He asked me a
we gave
question.
you
Can I answer
10
Yeah,
his
minutes.
question? I
Where
want to
let
answer
him
his question. I
Israel,
want to answer
let
his
him answer,
question.
and then you'll address him. You'll
I
have
want to
time.
answer. I want to answer his question. Now, the first part, yes, if you have an unknown circumstance, yes, you understand that there might be some legislation. Agreed. That's 100% true. The thing is that the rabbis don't claim when they make the decree on chicken and cheese that it's based on the Torah. They don't claim that. They claim it's based on other legislative authority, and that is the power to make decrees, takanot, gezorot, takanot, minhagot, which is basically the authority that is given to them by the people by their acceptance of authority, which is why a letter bethin.
people don't give the judges authority. God does.
Well, let me finish. Let me finish, please. That is true, and it's also true that the people have to accept them as well, which is why Rabban Gamliel was deposed. Rabban
Well, guess
Gamliel
what?
was deposed
I
because
don't
the people
accept
didn't
them.
accept him.
I'm a people, and I don't accept them. Is that fair?
Well, good for you. But the fact is, as a Jewish nation, not a Jewish religion, as a Jewish nation, we have our legislative system.
Which
Now,
nation? The
to answer
5% of Jews that are Orthodox?
but
Which
it's
nation?
a lovely, it's an excellent example of the meat and milk example, because if you look in the guide and if you look into other pagan texts at the time, the pasuk of Reshit Bekorecha Tavi Bet Hanagacha Lo Teveshach Gedi B'Chalei V'Mo was one mitzvah. It says when you bring your gifts to the Lord your God, don't cook a gedi in the mother of its milk, because that's precisely what Canaanite pagans were doing. Now, that was later legislated, we don't know when, by a Sanhedrin that splits it into two. Bring bikurim, bring gifts to the Lord your God, and then separately, don't cook a gedi in its mother's milk. It's very clear that legislation, what isn't a mitzvah in the Torah, has to come with the authority that the Torah that gives to the Kohanim, Leviim, and Shofet to decide. Now, you and I could argue about whether the rabbis are the valid Kohanim, Leviim, and Shofet. That's a valid
They're obviously
debate
not. They
to
don't
have.
fulfill any.
But there
One
is
second.
a authority.
Excuse me.
There
You
is
talk
an
for
authority.
10
You're
minutes.
denying authority.
1 second. No. I'm telling you that the authority defined in the Torah, Deuteronomy 17, that you're referring to, is the Levitical priests and the judge who are sitting in the place that God chooses to rest his name. Tell me how in the world Maimonides or the rabbis of the Talmud or their fake Sanhedrin reverse history at all confirms this line of reasoning to continue this way of thinking and this rabbinic ruling. They don't fulfill any of these definitions. Plus, they've taken a complete overreach of authority, not just to sit here and try to adjudicate pre-existing law, but to add hundreds, if not thousands, of laws that they claim the Jewish people have to follow at the threat of death, as I quoted the Gemara in Eruvin previously, saying that
So,
everything,
well,
if
that's
you go
rhetoric.
against, if
That's
you, 1 second,
rhetoric. It's
last thing,
clearly
it's
not
not
literal.
rhetoric, it's what the
It's
Talmud
rhetoric.
says.
It's
Just
it's
rhetoric.
rhetoric.
I
They
get it.
didn't put
The Talmud, the Talmud is not literal. Yeah, if you
no.
go
That's
against the
clearly
words of the
rhetoric.
rabbis, you're deserving
It's
of death.
clearly rhetoric. It is clearly rhetoric. No one has ever
Why do
put
they
to
have
death an
such
authority.
rhetoric? Why do they have such rhetoric?
Because
Why do
it's
they worship
the
themselves and their authority so much
because it's
over the Torah?
it is a record of discussions, and discussions use all sorts of hyperbole and everything else. That's what Gemara means. It means to speak. Okay, now Now, if you let me, I don't think you did it intentionally, but you did a little bait and switch. And the bait and switch was you said all Jews have authority, and then you say when I speak about no, that's not true. There is clearly in the Torah some authority. You then want to debate over the exact parameters of authority, and I actually agree with you about some of what you're saying about the parameters of authority, and it's a discussion worth having. But I note the bait and switch. So
So
you baited and
Raphael,
switched from.
we are gonna wrap up on that one. But can I
Yeah,
ask
no
you,
worries.
do you hold Maimonides to be kind of like the prime authority on your viewpoint?
No. No Maimonidean who understands Maimonides does, because we don't believe in Gedolim. Maimonides is an authority because, and as is demonstrably true, he represents the last. He represents it's a
To me,
summary of the
Maimonides was
conclusions
very
of the
much of a
Talmud.
different opinion than you on that, so that's a
No,
little
he
bit
no he
interesting.
wasn't. No, he wasn't. He's
He
consistent with the
condemned the
Rif. He's
Kabbalah. He
consistent with the
condemned the
Geonim.
Kabbalists.
It's about
He condemned the
what the
Kabbalists as
Talmud.
apostates.
Also,
No,
also,
well,
if we
first,
can go
well,
back
I,
to
well,
if we
I
can go
have
back
to
to your
agree, but
first quote.
I have to agree, but he's presenting the conclusions
So
of the
you would
Talmud.
say that the predominant,
It's not because he's
the
Maimonides;
predominant,
it's because it's the Talmud. It's
right?
not because it's Maimonides; it's
But what
because
you're
it's the
saying
But
is,
he's
Talmud.
according to
deciding. He's
you,
deciding which opinion in the Talmud everyone has to follow.
Based,
hold on a second.
yes, and it's
I'm gonna
consistent with the Rif.
I'm
And
gonna
it's,
mute you both for a second. So what you're saying is essentially from your viewpoint, you would condemn the vast majority of the Orthodox Jewish world today as sort of apostates in the way that they do things.
to a large degree, and usually it comes down to
Okay.
the same thing that I think where we agree on. There's a question of authority that needs to be sorted out. I think we're all in agreement there that there's a question of authority which the Orthodox don't want to deal with and are scared to deal with. And it's a discussion worth
Do you agree
having.
with
But yes,
Maimonides that
I agree.
people that mock the Torah, the oral Torah, in your viewpoint and Maimonides' viewpoint, should be put to death by the sword in public or thrown in a pit if you can't do it publicly?
Well, firstly, again, you're talking about at a time when we have
Come on, man.
jurisdiction
At least
and we're running a nation.
No. That's what Maimonides says. If you have jurisdiction, kill them by the sword. If you don't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
jurisdiction, push them in a
Moridin
pit.
ve'emalin.
And then he quotes the
Yeah,
Talmud: rub off the ledge so that they can't climb out and wait for them to die. So
yeah.
do
Moridin
you agree with that?
ve'emalin.
I'm not asking you to clarify it. I know the halacha very well from Maimonides. Would you agree that that's valid?
I agree, like all Sephardim do. There's a difference between the law and there's a difference between practicing it, and it's okay
Well, Maimonides
sometimes
makes the
to not
distinction, and he
follow
tells you
the
what to
law.
do when the law does not allow for it. Is
I
extrajudiciously
guess that's
to
just
do it.
another example of
No.
hyperbole, and it's more
I
of an
did, no,
attitude
no,
than.
no, 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 no. That's just unfair because that's unfair because I made that point about a very specific Talmudic verse, and now you're trying to turn it into ad hominem. There are many laws I don't keep. There are many laws you don't keep. There are many laws plenty of us don't keep, and that's okay because we're
No,
human.
Welcome to
I keep the
Christianity.
laws in the Torah. Well, yeah, yeah, I keep all the laws of the Torah.
No,
What
no,
do
no.
you
I
do?
believe it's authoritative. I just believe that I'm an imperfect individual. You believe that you're imperfect, so let's not do anything. There's a huge, huge gap.
No, he does. Israel definitely doesn't believe that, and I don't believe that
Um,
because
No,
we have a different system of
I mean,
interpretation. What do you mean, don't do
but
anything?
like I'm saying that because we're imperfect, now we're no longer bound by the law. Is a ridiculous claim.
Bro, I eat kugel every week and herring on occasion. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming on, and you're welcome back. I appreciate the respectful dialogue. Thank you.
No, I see ya.
Ash, can I just respond to one thing that he said in the beginning of the conversation? He talked
I
about
would rather that you didn't, just because he's already off and he can't respond in reverse. So I would give him the credit that not to.
for sure. It's more of a criticism of Maimonides, though, not of him.
Okay, go ahead.
Because Maimonides says that, and when the Torah says follow the Torah and the mitzvah, the law and the command, he says the Torah is the written Torah and the command is the oral Torah. But again, this just goes right into the fact that Maimonides either doesn't know how to read a text or is deliberately misleading people, because the mitzvah, the commandment, is inherent in the Torah itself, right? The written Torah contains all of the mitzvot, all of the commandments. So when the Torah says follow the Torah and the mitzvah, it doesn't mean follow the oral Torah. It means follow the written commandments in this book. I mean, it's pretty obvious to anyone who's reading, honestly.
Thank you for the super chat. As an ethnic Mizrahi Jew and a Christian Catholic, God bless you all. Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism. Absolutely, 100%. All right, let's go to. I hope it's not the same Isaac.
Oh no, is there anyone else?
What's wrong with me? I haven't been on yet.
Oh no,
Okay.
we just
We
had a
had
guy
a-
named Isaac come on last time we did this. Changed
Oh,
his
no,
name
no,
to
no. I've
Yitzchak
never
and then
been
to
on with you guys.
Levi
I appreciate you
and then to
taking my call.
Shimon and then Eliezer and then
No,
you
no,
know.
no. No, that's different. It's different. Guys, thanks for taking I appreciate it. I'm coming in good faith and with respect. I am an
Absolutely.
observant Jew, so I'm coming from that line of thinking. My line of questioning is not, it's not novel. I'm just generally curious how you guys will go about answering it, specifically Israel, because I watch some of your videos. I'm curious. You talk about how we're bound by Torah law. Jews are bound by the Torah, by the written word. So I'm curious, how do you know how to pronounce the words in the Torah, given that the text has no vowels? What tradition do you rely on for that?
Well, there's only a number of traditions of pronunciation. There's kind of like the Samaritan, uh, Arabic, Yemenite way of like saying vobs is was, and kind of I just go with like the standard Hebrew pronunciation. I think that meaning is more important than pronunciation, and if you know Hebrew, you understand the meaning of the text. The pronunciation is simply a practicality in order that we can understand each other. Like if I said, hello, who are you? Instead of just saying hello, how are you? That is just easier to communicate. So there is a standard way of pronouncing Hebrew. It would be more aligned with like the modern Israeli pronunciation. That's kind of
But there
how
is, I
I
mean,
go with it. Mhm.
I appreciate that. So generally speaking, I mean, I hold, and most, observant Jews historically hold by the Masoretic tradition. So,
Mhm.
where the vowels go, basically, and without citing specific examples, but Hebrew well enough to know that where the vowels are can shift the meaning of words in Hebrew. So I'm curious, um, on what
So
basis would you?
I get the can I answer just for a moment? So
Yeah, 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 for
um,
sure.
so first of all, there's been reconstructions of ancient Semitic languages that have been totally lost, unlike Hebrew that was kept for a long time. So to get general meanings, there's scholarship that does that anyways. But even just to say, like, how would you read this? People know how to read Latin and continued to read Latin until it became kind of a dying language, and yet people still also know how to read Latin. Same with Italian, same with German, same with Mandarin, because people pass down language that's kind of a trait of humanity. That doesn't indicate that there's also a secret oral tradition that goes with it, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But
It's
you, but
language is not a religious matter, right? We know how to speak English. Hebrew was maintained by the Jewish people, and props to them.
Well,
And
language in
By the
Judaism is
way,
very much a
I'm
religious
going to
matter.
interrupt the
God created the world
conversation.
with
I'm
language.
going to interrupt just for a sec because there's somebody in the chat who
Yeah.
keeps calling me a fake Jew. That's me with my unit in the IDF.
wow,
You're welcome. Thank me
I
for my
sports like
get,
a
service.
beard.
I get, without getting in too much into, like, I understand you both reject the rabbinic tradition, but it would seem to me that in accepting the Masoretic tradition and accepting the way that we currently read the Torah, you do believe in the validity of certain passed down traditions.
I don't accept the validity of the Masoretic tradition. To an
Do you,
extent, it
Israel?
matches closely to earlier traditions, but it's not perfect to those.
But I mean, in order
It
to,
differs from the Dead
yeah.
Sea Scrolls, so I
But
wouldn't say
but
that
but
I accept
Israel
it
is
as
different
authoritative.
because and that's fair, and that's consistent with what you've been saying. But Israel's been saying that Jews are bound by the Torah, bound by the law of the Torah. In order to be bound by that law, there has to be some understanding
Yeah,
of,
again,
and it's not just
you
the vowels; it's where
yeah, but
where even the breaks are. Like,
you
where do we
yes,
even
but
know where to start and finish?
yes, but again, you are creating a false reality that the Torah is unreadable without knowing the breaks and the pronunciation. The reality is that if you knew how to read the Torah, if you knew how to
Uh,
read
I'm going to interrupt
Hebrew.
you for a second
Mhm.
again. Tenebricent, I indulge you saying all kinds of crazy things. There's one thing I will not indulge, which is calling me a liar. Okay? Telling me that my background that I claim to come from is false. Okay? It's rude, it's disrespectful, it's also insane. Somebody says they're Jewish. Here's the picture of me in the IDF with my unit, and you go, "Well, many Jews serve in the non-Jews serve in the IDF." Okay, let's do this.
Sorry, Israel, you were going. You can continue if you want, or
Yeah.
I can jump back in.
Yeah,
Um,
again, you have to understand, like, when you read Hebrew, you know the meaning of the words, even if you wouldn't know pronunciation. You would know based off of the context whether it's past or present, whether it's future, whether it's masculine or feminine. It's that simple. All right. So
it's I
Hebrew
mean,
is
generally
Hebrew is
speaking,
actually one of the most simple languages
you
on
can't
earth, and
reliably read or understand it in any consistent way without a transmitted tradition. Like, you could recognize the Hebrew letters, you could attend rough readings, you guess where it's
yeah. But
Yeah,
found,
but
again,
you can't.
again, you're
Nobody would.
conflating.
But nobody
You're
would be able to
conflating the
speak Italian
preservation.
without a transmitted tradition either.
Exactly.
No,
I'm saying you're
for
conflating the preservation of a language with a religious matter. The fact that we can
different
all
with
speak
Italian
and
because
read
the
Hebrew.
vowels in Italian, the vowels are
How,
written
if there was
differently
no
than in Hebrew.
transmitted tradition, how would you know which vowels say which sound
That's what
and
exactly.
which ones are vowels?
I accept the transmitted tradition. I accept the Masoretic
Right, but
tradition.
all languages have a transmitted tradition. That's how you know how to
No. But
speak
in
them.
Italian doesn't have that. Italian doesn't have if
Yeah, but
in
how do you know
Italian
that A is A and not E?
you can't take the vowels away in Italian and then put them back in like in Hebrew. In Hebrew, you read the
Right, but
Torah,
if you
no
didn't have a
vowel.
transmitted tradition, you wouldn't know that the letter A makes that sound. You wouldn't know that the letter R makes that sound. It
It's a
doesn't
little
matter
bit
if there's.
different because the
It's
vowel.
literally. By the way,
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say this. This is literally the silliest argument from Rabbinic Judaism for validity. It's just a nonsense that that Tuvia Singer and Skobach repeat as if it makes some kind of sense. It's
To be fair,
absolute
I mean,
nonsense.
it's not, but it's not just to. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I guess
It
it's
literally
not
makes
so much.
zero sense.
It's not. No. It's
Like
just to point out. It's just.
like I
It
could then
only
come and
points out.
say, I speak Mandarin, and therefore
No. I
that
think you're
means God
misunderstanding.
transmitted a special Torah through the Mandarin. How would you know how to even read Mandarin if you didn't have the oral tradition that I'm presenting to you?
Respectfully, it just shows it points out an inconsistency wherein you're willing to accept certain passed down traditions, such as the Masoretic tradition, but you reject others. So the next
No, I
question
think
is,
Israel and I
what
would
gives?
both accept.
What,
Israel and I would both accept that there are traditions that Jews came up with that got passed down, and they're sort of valid traditions that Jews keep that
you
are
say
not invalid.
something that can't be sort of valid,
It
especially in a
can be
legal context,
if a
especially
group
when
of
you're
Jews
accepting the Torah. It's
if a
either
group of
valid or it's
Jews
invalid.
if a group of
Instead of
Jews eat chamin instead of cholent, it's a valid tradition. It got passed down. It
No.
doesn't mean
again,
it's
that,
Now
legally
that's
binding.
the tradition. This is
yeah.
this
Okay.
affects the
Listen,
legal code. This affects
this is so
affects the
frustrating because
meaning
it's
of the
clearly,
Torah.
one second, this is clearly an argument that is used against people that don't know Hebrew. Okay. I know Hebrew. Tell me one scenario in the Torah where you not knowing the vowels would inhibit you from understanding what's going on. Even if I read it with completely different vowels and pronunciations, I would still know what's going on because words have meanings. There's translation and then there's pronunciation, and those are two different things. All right. The fact that when you say a feminine verb, it ends with a ch instead of a cha, which is masculine. So, or I say to you, Hebrew, lecha, masculine, lach, feminine, right?
Well,
Based off of the context, if I'm talking
but
about
for
a
example,
woman,
like
I will
samech,
know that it's about a woman.
what is the word samech pei resh? Okay,
hmm Let's
what
let's
is
say I say
that could be
sapar.
that could be
Yeah.
book, that could be
hmm
scribe, that could in some cases even be
Oh,
barber,
so okay, exactly. So that's
depending
much
on
more
where the
modern. Yeah.
vowels
Okay.
are.
1 second. Okay. 1 second. Barber is way more modern. Okay. Let's go
I'm
on
just
Torah,
saying.
right?
But
One
I'm
second.
just using it as an
I'll give you
example.
the answer. I'll give you the answer. When it says that Moses wrote the Torah down on a sefer, did he write the Torah on a scribe?
But you do.
Oh, answer the question. Did Moses write the
In,
Torah on the head of a scribe or on a scroll? Probably, right? Right. So contextually, you can figure out what we're talking about. That's the whole point. That's how
but
you
okay,
actually read
here's my next question. Then
functionally.
for people who so you can figure it out because you
Oh,
know Hebrew and you're listen. Just
you
let
couldn't
me
figure
finish.
that
That's not
out.
what he's saying. He's saying that he, like every other Jew that learns
Not every
Hebrew,
other Jew. Not
uh,
every other Jew
can I
knows Hebrew.
every other Jew that learns Hebrew in an Orthodox setting learned the same language and reading of it. That doesn't mean that there's another tradition that goes along with the linguistic tradition of a legal system that was passed down without a broken chain. Those two don't make sense together. You can't.
Be-
It's a
mhm.
non sequitur. It's a
Because the
completely
English
invalid
language,
logical argument.
yeah,
You
because the
can't say
English
that there's
language,
secret other stuff that comes with it.
100%, because the
I'm
English
not. I'm
language
not.
has been
I'm actually.
preserved by the British. Now British law is God's law. It's ridiculous.
I guess. I mean, did.
Or
But
that
you
there was
do.
never a break in the legal system in England because there's a consistent language.
I guess the idea is if you accept the unbroken chain of how the Masoretic tradition, similarly,
No,
like
you're
any
missing
other
the
legal.
point. Every human being in society of any kind learns a language and speaks a language, right? There would be no society, no culture,
I'm not
nothing
talking
at
about, but it's
all
not about how
without a
you
language.
speak the. It's
That
not how you
doesn't
speak the
that
language. It's not how
doesn't
you speak the
create
language. It's about how you interpret the text. It's
that
about text. It's not about
that
language
doesn't
because
that doesn't
the
create a
text.
second system that comes along with the language.
No,
I mean,
it
you're
doesn't. But
just
it does
smuggling in
show that
all
you
of
guys
rabbinic
accept
authority.
certain. You accept certain passed down transmission as valid and others as not. And I'm curious what system you use to say this is this transmission is valid, that's been passed down through generations. We know where the vowels go. That's valid. But this other one we don't accept.
How about this? How about this? The very book that the tradition claimed to be preserving says that you cannot add or subtract to that book.
Do you believe that case law is adding or subtracting to constitutional law?
The Talmud is not case law. The Talmud makes up laws. We just talked about chicken parmesan. That's a made up
No,
law.
I mean that could be
We
seen
just
as a
talked about
safeguard.
the
I mean,
it's
you
not a
could say
law.
What
that there's-
case?
It's
What
not a
case?
law.
What? Okay, let's do this. What case would have been brought before the Sanhedrin to establish the law that chicken is beef, or cat,
I mean,
or goat rather?
similarly, you could. This is a similar
No, answer that
thing that I
question,
hear a
please,
lot.
because you're saying that it's
I
by
don't know.
case law.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
Somebody
I wouldn't-
along the line said, we know the reason why that we know the reason for that halacha. It's because somebody might see somebody else eating chicken and mistake it for meat and therefore confuse it and might then break the actual law. So you're talking about a gezerah on a gezerah on a gezerah, 3 steps away. So there's no reason for it other than some rabbi got paranoid that people in his community will do some other avera, some other sin. If they're allowed to do this, they might get confused. There's no validity for why that would be legally binding from the Torah. It's not even claimed to be from the Torah. Neither is sucking the blood from the circumcision wound even claimed to be from God. It's claimed as medical science, but yet somehow it became binding on the Jewish people as a law from God. Do you see where that's a problem? It's not even
in general,
not even the claim of the rabbi that made the law says it's from God.
I mean, in general, the Torah sets a principle. Not it doesn't.
Can you please
there's no
answer that
cases in the
question,
Torah.
though?
What's the question? Sorry, what was the question?
The question is, if the rabbi who made the law, in making the law, said it's not from God, why do you determine it to be binding from God?
One more time. I'm sorry. I'm not totally.
Rabbi Eliezer claims that one must suck the blood from the circumcision wound for the safety of the child to clean it from bacteria. Not that they knew about bacteria, but essentially cleaning it. He doesn't claim that it's an ordinance from God as an interpretation of how to do Brit Milah. He claims it as medical science, which we now know is false. Why is that practice still done, even with a tube to separate it so it's not mitzitza b'peh?
I mean, I hear that. I guess.
Why
you're
is that
saying,
done? Reform lady rabbis will do that when they do a circumcision because it's legally binding according to the Torah.
I mean, I'll tell you what you already probably
For all
know.
those
Like, there's
confused in the
biblical
chat,
law,
most
there's
Orthodox
Doraisa,
Jews
and there's
will use
rabbinic law,
a
there's
tube of some
Durabanan.
kind rather than, yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly the distinction that we're talking about.
But
the Torah law versus the rabbinic law. Rabbinic law is not Torah law. And so you have the ability to look at it and say, hey, these are the opinions of rabbis when they are commenting on a book that itself says this is the word of God, you may not add or subtract to it. Why in the world are we listening to a bunch of random rabbis' opinions just because it was written down in a book 2,000 years ago?
But in any legal system, there's always going to be recognized legal authorities outside of the quote unquote constitutional law. There's always going to be
what is the extent of their authority?
Case by case rulings.
What is the extent of their authority?
That then become passed down and recognized.
I get it.
That's how it works. That's how law works. The power
is there. Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
Go on.
Is there any limitation to that authority? For example, when Rashi says in the name of the Midrash that if the rabbis tell you that your right hand is your left hand and your left hand is your right hand, meaning he's saying the rabbis have the authority to distort reality in your face, is that the extent of their authority to just completely pull the wool over your eyes and tell you what to do like a little blind donkey?
I mean, do you contend? I mean, outside of you could say there's been personal bad experiences with rabbinic Judaism, and
I don't really have personal bad experiences.
Yeah,
with rabbinic
I don't have
Judaism.
personal bad experiences either. I think both Ash and I had what would be considered very peaceful, successful experiences in the Orthodox community. This is a truth matter ultimately, which is like, what are we bound to do by God's law?
How do you like when
what do we actually need to do?
When it says you can't work on Shabbat? What does that mean? What is work? Who gets to decide what work is?
Again, by starting off with the premise that you have no understanding of work, you're already entering into the rabbinic framework. The same way you start off with the premise that you couldn't possibly read the text without the rabbis. The bottom line is that work has a very clear definition. The Torah also says you should stay in your place and you should have
What's
your
the clear
food.
definition? Give me the clear
I'm
definition.
okay. So the clear definition is don't wake up in the morning and go to the office and do your work. Okay. The clear definition is
who says that?
that's
You
clear.
saying that.
That's clear.
That's rabbinic. That's your interpretation.
No, that's not rabbinic. That's interpretation. How do you know this? The sun is the sun and the moon is the moon. We're talking about basic words here. You're telling me work has no inherent definition whatsoever.
I mean,
if you go out in the field, let me give you an agricultural example. You go out in the field
wait.
And you do backbreaking labor for 12 hours a day. Is that work? Is there anything that you would acknowledge is obviously work, or the rabbis have completely gotten to your head?
You understand that in a legal framework, for example, when the Constitution says you have freedom of speech, then you go case by case, and then there's case law which adjudicates, okay, what's considered speech. It doesn't mean that individual people don't know what speech is. It means that there needs to be minutia and there needs to be discussion and conversations within a legal framework. So
I mean, there's
you're
not
saying,
actually that much
of course I know
minutia
what
with
work is,
freedom
but
of
from a
speech.
legal standpoint, it can't just be up to everyone's interpretation. There needs to be
Okay.
It needs to be laid out clearly. That's
So
how every legal system works.
Let's one second. Let's
works that way.
Okay. Let's talk about the clarity of the rabbis. Can you open a bottle cap on Shabbat?
You can't quiz me on Hilchah Shabbos because I'm not a rabbi.
Can you rip toilet paper on Shabbat?
I'm saying when you
well, I'm saying
I don't
that the
know.
rabbis don't provide you. Well, you do know. You do know that this is even a question. Okay, well, you know that this is a question.
But it makes sense to me in the sense of what is work. So can you go? There would be questions. You can't just say work is whatever I feel like it is, or I'll know work when I see it. That's not legal. That doesn't lead Torah to be that means Torah isn't a legal book. It's just a set of guidelines, and you kind of do what you want. But if it's a true book of laws, there would need to be interpretation.
Okay, so
there would need to be case law.
Let's have a conversation about.
Can I want to address that for a second. Mm-hmm. So there is in the criminal code, right? And obviously, I want to be clear. I do not think that the Torah is intended in the same capacity as a secular legal code. By the very definition that the rabbis themselves would make of what a legal code's distinction from the Torah is when talking about how you apply secular law. So that's already a non-starter with the claims of Rabbinic Judaism. But the point that we're trying to make is that the law might say something along the lines of, it's illegal to trespass on somebody's property without permission. Okay? Then somebody comes as a solicitor and knocks on somebody's door, and the person accuses them of trespassing. Now you take that to a court, and it's going to be up to a judge, and in this case a jury, which in the Jewish legal system it's kind of a mix of both, and they're going to determine whether or not that law was violated. And that might set some precedents for how you interpret that, but it doesn't mean that the law suddenly can be made where going near somebody's house is trespassing. Walking on the street next to their house is now the definition of trespassing. You can't change the law to that degree. You can interpret whether or not in this instance it was trespassing, right? But you can't say that now if you drive by their street, that constitutes trespassing. Would we be agreement on that?
I apologize. I only half fall. And you're probably in the right here. I can't.
What I'm asking is,
totally
can a judge determine whether or not in a particular case, when somebody went on somebody's property to solicit a knock on their door, whether or not it constituted trespassing, whether or not it was, did they know that there was a no soliciting sign? Did they not know there's
a judge could do that? Yes.
Right. We would both agree with you. And I think that would apply to Torah law as well. But the judge cannot say from now on, because of this instance where somebody confused things, anytime you drive by somebody's house without permission, that is now trespassing. That would be absurd, right?
Well, not necessarily, because actually, there is precedent. So if a judge rules a certain way, there is. I mean, that's the way our legal system works.
The judge can't now say that driving on public property near. No, a judge cannot come and say.
If a judge rules a certain way in a lower court, that would be precedence, and somebody else. That's how the law works. It would have.
Yeah, but this is just worshiping man's authority. It's worshiping man's authority, allowing men to regulate your own freedom under God.
I can't believe you didn't concede that. I
Yeah,
literally
because
can't
again,
believe you didn't concede
now
that.
you can't get near someone's
What do
house
you mean
with
man's
from
authority? I
a
don't understand what that means. What does man's authority mean? Sorry, what does that
their
mean?
subjective judgments about what constitutes work, telling you that you can't separate peanuts on Shabbat and you can't push your baby in a stroller to your neighbor's house because that's transferring of domain.
But
Okay, those
if
are
you
all
believe that,
subjective. No, I
but if
don't
in order
believe
for the
in their. Yeah, so the same way that they have the ability to have opinions, I have the ability to have opinions. And quite frankly, my opinions are far superior to their stupidity. So the bottom line
but
that
so
I'm trying to
you're
tell you
saying
is,
you're yeah, okay, but
let's
so
talk
two
about what the
things.
Torah says. I want to give
You're
you just a
you're
few parameters that the Torah describes. Can I tell you a few parameters the
no,
Torah
I'm not. I
describes
don't
in
want to go
Shabbat?
into. I don't want to get into the. I want to go into the
No,
larger
you don't.
idea here, which is that without interpretation, it's not law at all. It just becomes a vague set of instructions. So you're
It's
saying
We
that
not
we
that
the
just
vague.
Torah,
we
I'm
just
trying.
agreed with you that that applies to an extent,
you
but
say the
to what
Torah is
extent?
not law. It's just a vague. It's a vague set of instructions up to everyone's own interpretation. That's what you believe, Israel.
No, I'm trying to tell you, but you're not letting me, that there are clear instructions in the Torah regarding Shabbat. Okay? It tells you to have your food cooked the day before. It tells you to rest in your place, not go out and do your work. And so pretty much what that looks like is that you're staying at home, you're resting, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're not cooking, you're not working, you're not traveling. You just stay where you are. You don't do much and you don't go anywhere far. All right? So that's like keeping you in your domain, keeping you in your house, keeping you, resting. When it comes down to the details of can you cut your cucumber? Can you squeeze your lemon? Can you dry your hands on a towel? These are questions the rabbis have. That is ridiculous. That is
No,
not
it's
anywhere
not because
near.
the
That is not anywhere near their place. It's not their
Israel, what
place
you're
to
describing is
adjudicate law to that
personal.
level.
You're
No, no,
describing
no.
personal guidelines for your own lifestyle, but that's not how law works. Law doesn't. It
Why do
needs
you think the
predictability
rabbis
to
have the
function.
authority? Excuse me. Why do you think the rabbis have the authority to dictate every single move you make in your
You're
life?
jumping. You're jumping.
How you
You're
tie your
not addressing
shoes?
what I said.
How you?
You're not
Well, I am
addressing what I
addressing what
said.
you said. I am
You're
addressing
not.
what you
You're
said
jumping.
because
You're
no,
jumping
I'm
to
not
another
jumping.
thought. Do you
You're
agree
saying
that
that taking.
in order for there to be a law, there needs to be a standard? Do you agree with that?
Okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to use another example like the one I used because I can't believe you didn't concede that. So, the law says you cannot assault somebody physically, correct?
Yes.
Right. Two friends though can go into a dojo and kick the crap out of each other, and it wouldn't be considered assault, right?
Correct.
Because to their personal interpretation, neither of them assaulted the other, right?
Well, it's not. It's
Hold
not
on.
about their
Can I?
person.
No. Let's
No, wrong.
one step at a time.
That's not why.
No, they both agreed together that under the law that says you can't hit somebody, that they're consenting together to engage in this combat sport, correct?
But
That's
it's
why
not
they're
about
allowed
what
to do
they.
it. No, but that's why
It's
they're
not
allowed to
about.
do it is because they both
It's
consented
no.
to
It's
it.
because the law. It's because the law recognizes that as a lawful activity. It's not about what they
Right.
agreed to. It's the law
Okay, sure.
recognizes that as
The law
lawful. It's
recognizes their personal
judges
interpretation of the
recognize
matter
that.
as valid.
Doesn't matter what they think or care. If they're
Right.
doing that, the law
So
recognizes that
so
as
if those
lawful.
two people are seen doing this now on the street, which is still legal, by the way, in most places, and a cop arrests them both, and they're brought before the judge for this assault, right? And the guy goes, "No, Your Honor, I let him hit me. We were doing this," and the judge says, "No, you can't do that. You can't let him hit you," right? You'd say that that's overreach on the part of the judge, right?
I don't know. None of this sounds like like
I'm giving
how.
you very, very clear examples
But
of
none of this sounds like
judicial clear cut
how the court
and judicial
doesn't sound like how the
overreach.
judicial system works at all. I mean,
Exactly. No, that's exactly what Ash is saying. Judicial overreach. That's the term here that you fail to understand. According to the rabbis, there are instructions on what you're supposed to say and do from the minute you open your eyes in the morning. What you're supposed to say, how you're supposed to tie your shoes, how you're supposed to wash your hands, how you're supposed to walk. You cannot walk with your back straight. You cannot walk with your head uncovered. You have to say this prayer at this time. You have to say this and go here and do this and do that. That is not the authority that the Torah is giving to the rabbis. That is not the law of the Torah. That is an overreach of power by people. I see someone here commenting again with this ridiculous source, Deuteronomy 17. Listen to whatever they tell you, referring to, again, a doubt in the existing law for the high court in the temple that doesn't exist, pretending that relates to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and tells you exactly how you're allowed to have sex with your wife, and you have to turn the lights off, and you have to put a clothing up, and you can't, God forbid, have oral sex because that's an abomination. You see what all of that's not the Torah. Not the Torah. That is judicial overreach.
Israel, you keep saying that the Torah is law, but how do you
Hmm.
have law without something outside yourself defining it?
We just
You
explained to
The
didn't.
you,
You
Torah, the
didn't.
Torah.
and I assume you were listening to the
How do you have
previous
law
caller as
without
well.
consistent standards or shared way of
Yes,
interpreting it?
you need a
How?
judicial system, and we would concede that there is room for a valid judicial system that would
We're just
interpret the
saying
law,
the rabbis are
not
not
to
a valid
create
judicial system.
new laws,
That's
and the
not
rabbis'
that's
claim to it is
okay, so that's
invalid.
different. That's okay. This is different, Israel, than what you were saying. You were saying work is basically I'll know it when I see it.
No, I was saying that
You're
first
saying
of
that
all,
we
let's
need a
establish that
different
work has it. No, I said let's first establish that work has a definition. Let's also
what's the
describe that the Torah. What's the definition
what's
of
the Torah's
work?
definition of work? Yeah, give it to
The
me.
Torah's definition of work are the things that you do. I mean, it's not the Torah. It's literally like just what is blue, what is green, right?
No, you're
Work is
wrong.
work
That's
is
not true. That's
okay.
not true. Work is totally up to interpretation. If
Totally subjective.
my dad's a
Okay.
painter, is that work when he paints because he loves it so much, but he also makes money from it? That would be a question. I don't know.
Hmm. Right.
What's work?
I understand, and we should definitely ask questions. All right, but let's just say that the Torah gives you the Torah confines you to a certain area on Shabbat with you have nowhere to go and you have nothing to do. All right, if you're advancing your life in any particular way, obviously what we do 6 days a week, we work, we accomplish things, we build things, we make money. That's the modern way of work. But the point is that we do things to advance ourselves in the world in some way, whether it's laborious work, whether it's certain kinds of works that we do nowadays. We do things through technology, but the bottom line is there is a definition of work. You kind of know when you're working. It's not work to cut your cucumbers for your salad. All right, it's not work.
You
And again,
kind of know when you're working is not a legal definition of
okay,
work. That
so here's
again
the thing.
doesn't
I'm
sound
sure you
legal
would
to me.
love for someone to hold you on a leash and tell you what to do every second of your life.
No, I
But
just you
I'm
reject
sorry that,
you
that
reject
that's
rabbinic interpretation. Fine, that's okay. But then it
mhm.
sounds like you get to interpret the law how you feel like it. You haven't
Yes.
given a real
By the
interpretation.
way, okay, yes, you are actually allowed to follow Shabbat according to your understanding.
But then that's
Granted,
not a law. That's not
Mazel tov.
law.
That's not a law.
That's
Why is that not a law?
guidelines. That's
No, the
suggestions.
law. What is the law? Yeah, yeah.
That's not a legal framework. That's
I mean,
instructions.
okay, again, so just you're trying to make the Torah work with modern legalities that you have a tiny little law for every little thing. The Torah is a book of freedom. The Torah is a book that tells you follow these guidelines and you will be blessed and you will be walking the path of God. If
So
there
it's a
are
book of
cases of doubt,
law and a book of freedoms, according to you.
yeah, it's a book of if you
Okay, so
follow
that
these
sounds like
guidelines,
a
if you
paradox.
follow
It sounds like
no
you're being a little
law,
No, the Torah
inconsistent.
is
no
also a book of
freedom doesn't mean
prophecy
you
and
can.
a book of all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Also, freedom doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. The Torah gives you the guidelines that you're able to live a free life where you're not crossing certain boundaries. And yes, there are things that are doubtful. And again, something you have to understand, there is no centralized authority. There is no actual judicial system that is guided by the hand of God. The rabbis are clearly an example of an overreach of power and corrupt subjective opinions that have no bearing on the text whatsoever. And that's our main argument. And the reality is the Torah describes a case where Israel is a united nation in the land under God, where there is an authority from the place that God chooses, where there is prophets like Moses, where there are people that can instruct us from the mouth of God, where there are kings that are chosen by God. By the way, the king must be chosen by God. So we need God as part of the picture. The rabbis' subjective interpretation is just as powerful as mine. And so I have every right to argue their opinions with my own opinion. And yes, there's a
This
subjectivity to
doesn't.
that. And so we can actually come to better conclusions than the rabbis
I,
came to, believe it or
this
not.
doesn't sound like law to me. Sounds like it's you. If I personally believe that we're bound by the Torah. I know that not everyone on the call believes that. But if you're bound by the Torah, you can't be bound by guidelines or suggestions. You have to be
Why?
Everyone,
bound by law.
everyone on
And
the
if the
call
Why?
Torah is
believes
meant
that.
to bind us, it has to function as law, not as something that each person gets to
Can I?
define for
Can
So
I?
again,
themselves.
Can
That's
I?
you have
Can
a
I
you have a
just hold on?
pre-existing
Hold
understanding of what
on.
law is. To
Wait a
you,
second. Both muted. Both muted. No point. Okay. Why, when people come up here, do they say that as a Christian, I wouldn't believe that you're bound to the Torah?
Are
You
you
realize it's
asking me that?
it's a ridiculous straw man of Christianity and what the claims are, right?
No, I didn't
But
mean.
I mean,
Sorry.
it's not about.
Am I muted? I didn't mean that in a. I honestly didn't mean that in a derogatory way. I
No, I
didn't
don't.
want
I'm
to put
not saying
words
that
in
you
your
meant it
mouth.
derogatory. I'm just saying it's silly. Like you
I didn't
always seem to
know. You're right.
misunderstand what the.
I don't mean that. I honestly meant that respectfully. I didn't. I didn't want
No,
to
I don't
assume
think
that
you were
you
being
believe that.
disrespectful. I think you were being uneducated, and that's why I'm correcting you.
No, I didn't mean. I just don't know enough about you and your beliefs. I didn't. I don't even really know that you're Christian. I know Israel's work more than yours. I'm sorry. I don't really know the backgrounds.
No,
So
no worries. Just correcting
I
that because
apologize.
it'll make
Yeah, yeah,
it'll
no,
make
no,
you
no, for
sound
sure.
silly in a
No,
discussion with a Christian when you say
that's
that.
fair. And I didn't. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to know. But I know that Israel believes that we're bound by the law. Like he says. He
Yeah,
said that
I
on this
believe that we're
call
bound by it,
earlier.
and we have to fulfill it literally, right? And you're correct that Christians believe that it's been fulfilled, so now they don't have to fulfill
And we're
every
gonna do two
detail
more
of the
minutes
law.
here.
Literally, yeah,
Okay.
and I believe that you do. The reality is, I think that you have a preconception of law, and you're projecting that onto the Torah. To you, law means that every tiny example of every scenario is defined clearly, and you're instructed on how to behave every given second of your life. When you read the Torah, you're introduced to a different kind of law. Okay, it's not a law that is overbearing in any way. They are clear guidelines, red lines in the sand. To give you an example from the beginning of creation, God says to Adam, eat from all the trees of the garden. There's one tree, don't do it. Okay, that's how Torah law is structured. Everything is permitted until proven to be forbidden. Not everything's forbidden until proven to be permitted. So to you, law has to be some sort of very intricate, specifically defined thing. In the Torah, the law is more broad, and the claim is that if you follow these guidelines, you will be blessed and not cursed, and you will be in the good graces of God. And so it's more about the guidelines rather than the specificities of the law, and that's baked into the cake of what the Torah is. So you're trying to turn the Torah into something that it's not. The Torah is not this legalistic binding law on every single second of your life. It is general principles and guidelines of morality and ritualistic behavior that can turn you into a holy priest of God who's moral, who's following the Ten Commandments, who's
All right,
following
we're gonna.
the laws of sexuality and
Can
sexual
I
purity.
just respond to that in 30
Yeah,
seconds? Because
yeah.
I hear it. Look, it's fair, and not every law defines every detail explicitly. But I would say that, even laws that aren't fully detailed still need to have some shared standard of interpretation, because
And
otherwise
hey,
the law can
it
mean
probably there
completely.
probably yeah, there probably would be a shared standard if we were a united people with God's communication. But right now we're an exiled, scattered people who just need to return to God heart and soul and actually learn what it means to be a human being.
The reason why, by the way, it's not a fun. You're right. The Torah itself is not. It's not so
The
legalistic. It's
Torah
not,
says it's because
concerned
of
with
our
every.
sins that we're
But
exiled.
for 2,000 years, this is what happens after 2,000 years of exile. In order to have things like a Masoretic tradition, a transmission, any kind of transmission that 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 goes forward, there's going to be there's going to be a lot of details. It leaves a lot of time for people
Yeah.
to
Isaac, I
get
think we're
into
going to
the
wrap up here,
minutia.
but
Okay, I
at some
appreciate you
point come
guys.
back on so
Yeah.
because we can get further into it and we can go to the claims of the oral Torah and what it actually is, because I think that would be interesting for you to actually look at the history of. Maybe go watch my interview that I did with Dr. Golan Broshi, um, and enjoy that because there's a
All
lot of
right, thanks,
context there.
guys.
God bless.
All right, I'm just going to read a couple super chats and then pull up the next person. Love the work you are doing, guys. Keep it up. Thank you. Thank you, Ash from Saintly Repent. Thank you. Love the beard, Ash. Thank you. And then Paul the Baptist, I see you sent this super chat twice for $5. If that was a mistake, just ask a question in the chat at some point. I'll honor it as a super chat. All right. So we got, by the way, for people in the green room, if you keep leaving and coming back, you're going to lose your place because there are people waiting. So, and we've had pretty nice conversations, fairly respectful. So let's keep this going. All right. I hope it's did I misspell it or mispronounce it? Is it a rooster or a roster or a roster?
Roster,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so both of you believe in the prophets that came after Moses.
Israel, you want to take that one? Because you're the odd
I
one out
I
here.
do not believe that they have the authority to contradict what's written in the 5 books of Moses.
But were they true? Were they true prophets? Were they accurately reporting what God told them?
In many ways, but
Can I ask? Sorry, Roster, what is your background? Like, what's your belief system?
I'm a rabbinic Jew.
Okay.
So you believe that they're true prophets? Both of you do. How do you know that they're true prophets? Based on what?
okay, I'll answer first. Like I said, the definition of a prophet is someone that is in alignment with what the Torah says. So, to the extent that the prophets confirm what the Torah says and calls people back to follow the Torah and repent and stop being evil, I see that as a very valid message that needs to continue.
Right, but we have to rely on prophets for certain things where the Torah is not clear. So how do you rely on them for those things?
What do you, give me an example of prophets telling us things where the Torah is not clear.
For example, the Torah is not clear where we should be building the Beis Hamikdash, the temple. And so we trust that the prophets who were in King David's time were God and Nassan. We believe that they're true prophets, and therefore we'll trust them when they say that the temple should be in a particular area. Right? The Torah says that
I find it
the
interesting
place
that
that I will
Jews are
choose. Yeah.
so. I understand. I understand your point. I just find it interesting that Jews are so obsessed with things that are not relevant. As in, tell me, are you about to build the temple? I don't see anyone building the temple. I don't see anyone doing this. So how is that relevant?
Well, first of all, it is relevant because if someone who's an Israeli Jew and votes for politicians, he'll vote for a politician who will push forward the concept of rebuilding the temple. So the question is, and you agree, historically it was important where the temple was, and the way I know that God and Nosson were true prophets is because we trust the rabbinic tradition that they vetted God and Nosson and they determined that they were true prophets. But if
So
you
it's up to
don't
the
trust
rabbis to
rabbinic
vet
tradition,
prophets.
yes,
Yeah. What gives them the authority to vet
exactly.
prophets?
And where do you see that?
Well, because otherwise you would have no way of knowing who's a prophet. The Torah never tells you how you know someone's a true prophet. Torah never says so. Torah says how you know someone's a false prophet. Never tells you how you know someone's a true prophet.
Well,
The
it
Torah
does.
assumes that there will
Mhm.
be. Mhm.
Well, it says that
Where's the Torah
a
say?
prophet. It says that a prophet who speaks truth that is in line with God and the law and what he says, if he makes predictions, those predictions come true, then he's a true prophet.
It doesn't say. It says if he makes predictions which don't come true, you know he's a
I
false
mean, that's
prophet.
by
But
definition, that means if they do come true,
not
then he is a true
necessarily.
prophet.
Not necessarily.
Okay, I thought that was
One
obvious.
you. It's not.
So, can
It's
you
far
give me
from
a
obvious.
name? Can you give me the name of one of the rabbis who verified Nathan the prophet?
I don't. There's a rabbinic consensus that these people were true prophets.
The
And
rabbinic
as
consensus
Jesus says,
that we first see when? Where's the rabbinic
1,000 years
consensus
after.
in
what I
history?
mean, there was never any controversy in the rabbinic tradition, and there's a consensus across all the rabbis that these individuals were true prophets. And as Jesus says, the rabbis or the
Tenebris,
Pharisees
I
sit
didn't
in this
say that you claimed that. I said it publicly in the stream that you accused me of being a fake Jew who was in the IDF but not Jewish, which is public on the stream. That's what you said. That's what I responded to.
Yeah.
God help
Also,
you. You can't
I
even
did.
respect your fellow Jews. Well,
Yeah. By the way, I would say in terms of confirming the temple, there are multiple things that need to be confirmed again by God. We don't know what the Urim and Tumim are, the lights and the perfections. We don't know who the descendants of Aaron are, other than people claiming to be Mr. Cohen. Therefore, he's the descendant of Aaron. And as you said, we're not 100% sure from the Torah's narrative where the place that God chooses is. I think that when it comes to things like that, it's going to require a lot more communication with God. You have to look at the historical place that we're in right now. If you look at the Torah in Deuteronomy, it says you will be scattered across the earth and you will be lost without God and you'll be in the depth of your sin. And at that moment, it doesn't say rebuild the temple. It doesn't say go conquer the land of Israel. It says return to God, heart and soul, right? You and your children, and start following the commandments that are accessible to you and becoming a moral and ethical and righteous person by the Torah standards. So that's what we need to be doing at this time in history, not obsessing about unknown things that are in the hands of God. In fact, when the Torah says, how do you know if a prophet's not true if what he says doesn't come true, right? So we're waiting to see what prophecies come true. The unknown future is with God. The hidden things are with God. The revealed things are with us and our children to do what the Torah says. So we need to do what's revealed to us and what's accessible to us in this moment.
Right, but I'm saying that it's clear from the Torah that the Torah wants you to trust traditions that are not written in the Torah. The Torah does not tell us
No. It's not
Where the
clear.
Beis Hamikdash should be, it doesn't
Not
tell us who will be the
traditions. That's
future
not traditions.
prophets.
Prophecy and tradition are two very different things.
Right, but it's a tradition regarding prophecy. According to you, there is no way anybody can know after the first generation. Maybe if you're around the prophets who were there when they built the first temple, then you should respect the temple. But afterwards, it'll be, since you don't trust any sort of tradition, you question everything. So then you would have no reason to accept the prophets once they died. You have no reason to respect the temple.
Well, I mean, again,
It's
you can
obvious the
even look at
Torah
the
wants
fact
you.
that the Samaritans dispute the location of the temple. There's dispute even on the location of the temple. That's something that's necessary to point out. What there's no dispute about is the Ten Commandments. What there's no dispute about is what we need to follow as human beings in order to be righteous, and as Israelites in order to be a light unto the nations. And that's something that we can implement at this moment in time right now, and that's far more important.
Right, but regarding the Samaritans, they're a very small part of the, in terms of
Mhm.
number, compared to the rabbinic Jews. And the Torah tells us
Minority. Yeah, the Torah tells us what?
to follow the majority, and
No, it
therefore
doesn't.
they have different
No, it
Torah.
doesn't. Do you know what it
You
says
said
about that? By the way, this is like the most misunderstood, misquoted verse probably by Orthodox Jews, other than the one in Deuteronomy 17. Follow what they tell you and don't go to the right or the left. In Exodus 23:2, it says, "You shall not follow the majority for evil, and you shall not respond over a dispute to turn after the majority to pervert. You shall not pervert the law or do evil on the basis of a majority," which means that a majority does not dictate truth and falsehood. If something is false, even if the minority is the one who's standing for that truth, they would be right. By your definition, you're a minority of the Jewish people. A minority of the Jewish people are Orthodox. Does that mean you're wrong?
no, only you follow the majority if there's a doubt. So I have a doubt.
No,
Let's say
not if there's
which
a
Torah
doubt.
is the
You don't follow the majority ever. You follow the truth. You follow what's right.
right. Well, if
So
I'm not sure
majority
which
doesn't
version of the
dictate
Torah is
what's
accurate,
right.
right? It doesn't. But logic tells you that if you have two groups and you have one group that has millions of people and they have one version of the Torah, and then you have the Samaritans that are a very small group,
So by
you'll
your
follow the
definition, you
majority
should be
since
Christian.
there's a
By
doubt.
your definition, you should be
I, I, I
Christian.
I don't have a doubt. I don't
You
have a
should, you
doubt
do,
that
dude. You
Christianity
should be
exists.
Christian, or you should be a secular Jew, or you should
Or a
be a
Muslim.
Buddhist, like a Muslim. I mean, you're looking for
I'm,
numbers out here, please.
no, when there's a
What
question,
about
then
Noah? What if Noah
follow
I
the
followed
mean,
the
I mean,
majority? Where would we all be?
I'm going to interject here because the problem with that claim is that one of the prominent rabbis, founders of Rabbinic Judaism as we know it, Yochanan ben Zakkai, like the story is that he admits that he had the rest of the leadership killed and made a deal with the Romans. So, I mean, that's a problematic claim to make the majority claim, right? Even like, it's a silly claim to make. The majority rule thing is
No,
obviously
I
a
mean
problem there.
you don't think it's more likely that our Torah is more accurate than the Samaritan Torah? You don't think the fact that we have millions of people and
I
millions
think
of
I think that the
generations?
Septuagint that the church had in the 4th century aligns more closely with the Dead Sea Scrolls in many occasions. Why would you trust your Masoretic text?
Okay, but there's no halachas that are different based on the Dead Sea Scrolls or not. But regarding the Samaritans,
You're
there's
changing the
actually halachas
goalpost. You're
that's
changing the
different.
goalpost. You're making claims to authority based on accuracy to an earlier proper tradition, and then you changed it to whether or not it actually distorts anything.
Well,
You
if
can't
it
switch it
doesn't
as you
distort
want.
anything, it's irrelevant. If it doesn't distort it, then it's irrelevant. So I
I
don't
mean,
really care much
I mean,
about it.
it's not. I mean, it's relevant regarding like time calculation and certain things like that.
And who has
But
the
what I
authentic
will say,
tradition?
yeah, I mean, likely the Septuagint, but that's a different conversation. The real conversation, again, by the way, I made the same argument as you, which is if we're talking about what you're calling halacha, which I call the Torah, the actual relevant laws that we all agree upon need to be implemented right now. We don't disagree about that. That's why I think it's much more important to return to the foundation here to talk about what the Torah really says and how we can implement that in the here and now instead of focusing on unknown futures or things that are not within our power.
Okay, let me just bring up a couple of other points if possible, unless you have to go to your next caller.
Well,
But
no,
we do
I don't
find
have
that
to go yet. I don't have to go, but I want to ask you something. So what we're dealing with here is a lot of presuppositions that the authority must be there to interpret things, and we're saying no. There's no reason why we should believe that, and there's no evidence that you have other than you think that it's logical that it should be. But if we actually go internally to a critique, right? So the rabbis themselves say things that invalidate rabbinic tradition, right? So, for example, Yochanan ben Zakkai admitting to making a deal with the Romans where the other schools outside of the school of Gamliel are going to be killed, but their school is going to remain. That would mean other Pharisees are being killed. That would mean the Sadducees are being killed. That would mean the Zealots are being killed, all of which have very differing views on things. So, you're talking about a tradition that consolidated power by force anyways, using a bigger bully to do so. On top of that, Yehuda Anasi claims that it's forbidden to write the oral Torah, which is why he didn't, but it had to be written at some point because it would be lost. But that claim could be made about any point in the travesties that exist in early Israelite history, right? You could make that claim during the Babylonian exile. Why wasn't it first written there with the creation of the scribal culture and everything that's going on? You'd think that would be the logical first place. Not only that, it's a few hundred years after Christian texts are starting to be very widespread. All of a sudden they make this decision, and they even make the claim in one of the Midrashim. I have to find you exactly where it is, but the reason, and you know this is true, so it's not like I'm coming up with something that you haven't heard before. The reason why the oral Torah had to be oral is so that the Gentiles couldn't steal it like the written Torah. It's a very convenient claim to make when there's all these Greek literatures being dispersed at the time. So in an internal critique, you can see that there's nothing logical about the claim that the rabbis are making about the authority, right? Not only to mention that the first time we see a copy or manuscript of the Mishnah is like the 8th or 9th century, which I don't think invalidates that it's really 2nd, 3rd century, but it's also problematic to say about the legitimacy of who's actually saying what in that text.
I mean, like I said before, it's clear that the Torah assumes that we're going to be following tradition, and we find that commandments.
Right, but it doesn't say the tradition is going to be binding or from one specific group of rabbis that got power by force through the Roman, military.
Yeah, but you're making it sound as if our entire tradition comes from Rabbi Gamliel. The majority or a large portion of
I don't think it comes
Jews
from Gamliel. I think it comes from rabbis in the 2nd century claiming authority. I'm not saying all the traditions started then. They obviously go back further, but claiming the authority and the transmission unbroken is a 2nd to 3rd century claim that doesn't exist prior. Just doesn't exist.
Okay. It could be a later claim, but ultimately the traditions that are found in the Mishnah and Jews were spread very wide during those times. There were Jews in North Africa, there were Jews in Rome, there were Jews in Babylon. They were spread very wide, so it's hard for me to accept that.
So can I ask you a question about what you believe is? So the rabbis have authority, okay? So do you remove your fish plates Friday night before you bring meat out?
I do.
Okay. Why?
Because Jews accepted it upon themselves to be bound by the Talmud.
It's not from the Talmud. That's not true.
It's Maimonides, right?
Oh,
no, not even. It's much later. It's 15th century Yosef Karo. First time you ever see this ruling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, separating fish and meat.
Fish and meat, not chickens and meat. Even we're going now to fish species, not only domesticated animals, right? But what's the reason given? Why does Yosef Karo forbid fish and meat?
Because it's dangerous to mix them.
Right.
Physically dangerous.
So there's two really big problems that we can see with the fish and meat debate. So Yosef Karo writes in an earlier edition of the Shulchan Aruch that you shouldn't eat fish and cheese together, or fish and dairy together, rather, mishum sakana, because of the danger. And he corrects it to fish and meat. But some Sfardim, and some Hasidim maintain this because he must have said it under divine inspiration when he said it the first time. That's already one extremely ridiculous claim. The rabbi corrected his own opinion and said, I made a mistake in writing. But even then, the fish and meat together is a claim to a medical science. We know we're not supposed to endanger our lives, and this is somehow some danger that is so great that we have to ban this practice of eating fish and meat together. It's not even claimed to be authoritative of Jewish law. It's just a medical claim. Why is that still kept as rabbinic law when we know that, one, it's not true, and two, it's not even claimed to be an authority from God? It's not even the claim of the rabbi saying it.
Oh, so Herschel Schachter from YU, he actually says that it's not necessary. It's a mistake. Then the Talmud, was just following the medical
Yeah,
science. Or the
good
Shulchan Aruch
luck.
was following the medical
Good
science
luck
at the
getting
time.
a job in Hashgacha if you admit that, though.
Yeah, okay. I mean, listen, if that's wrong and we should really start mixing them, okay. I mean, I don't think my whole religion is not based on
But it leads to a bigger
fish
problem. Rabbis say so, therefore forever, even when we know that it's nonsense, even though when prominent scholars in the Jewish community say it's nonsense. But rabbis say so, therefore forever. That's what we're claiming about how rabbinic tradition started. And it's been the rule since the beginning. Even one of, I think is Rabbi Hanina, one of them says, you didn't believe my words. He makes some crazy claim about angels in the sky, in the sea. And the student says, Rabbi, I didn't see, I didn't believe you that these angels were out in the sea until I saw them with my own eyes. And unlike Jesus, who says, blessed are you who believed with seeing, and blessed are those who believe without seeing, Rabbi Hanina, if it is Rabbi Hanina, I could be mixing up, says, how dare you not believe me on my word, even though it was a crazy claim, and he reduces the person to ashes and dust with his vision, basically, by looking at him. That's the claim of a rabbinic authority. You must believe us even if we say something insane. That's a predominant view in the Talmud of the rabbis. Do you see that that's a problem, that you can't take that claim legitimately?
No, because we believe in the Talmud, or we follow the Talmud, not because we necessarily believe that everything that the Talmud says is true. We follow the Talmud because Jews got together and said that it makes sense for us to follow the Talmud, and indeed, the communities that follow the Talmud, they were able to perpetuate themselves, and the Jewish communities that followed Christianity, and the Jewish communities that followed the Karaites, they eventually dwindled.
What?
So
the Jewish communities that followed Christianity dwindled?
Yes, there were Jews who were Christians, and eventually those Jews,
so you're making a presuppositional claim here. If the claim of Christianity is true, then those brought into that covenant are true Jews. Just like if rabbinic Judaism is true, then people that convert into it are true Jews. You'd have to presuppose your view to use that proof. You can't use that as evidence. You can't say I'm right because the community dwindled, but I only say it dwindled because I don't believe that they're right. Like I'm
talking about Jews who followed. I'm talking about Jews who followed the Torah.
Right, but you're presupposing what that means and then using it as evidence.
No, these communities, they just it was the first few generations. They were following the Torah. They were.
I don't think you understood what I just said.
Maybe he's talking about like Messianic Jews or like Jews who follow
and eventually
the law.
That belief system disappeared. And you're saying maybe they converted to a different form of Christianity. Maybe they converted to Catholicism.
No, you're making up things about the first centuries of Christianity that are debunked and false about how the early Christians practiced. Right, I'm not going to get into interdenominational Christian.
Okay, fine. Listen, I'm not an expert in early Christianity, but at least regarding Karaites, there was a large community, and eventually they died out.
But again, you're making an appeal to majority. 1 second, you're making an appeal to majority once again. I ask you if Noah
we'll wrap up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, if Noah was following the majority, where would we all be? You cannot make your judgments based off of a majority. You have to make your judgments based off of truth. What I'm telling you is when you read the Torah, you see exactly what it says. It says do not add or subtract. Then when you read the Talmud and you read the rabbis' writings, you're seeing a bunch of opinions and rulings that have no basis in the text itself. Now, you yourself said, oh, that's because we accepted it on ourselves to follow it. That's because we trust these rabbis, right? So it's really just it's rabbi worship and self-worship. We believe these people blindly, and we also trust
absolutely.
that we have the ability to self-obligate, and now it's true because we obligated ourselves to do it, right? I'm telling you, what does the Torah say? What does the Torah actually say? And the Torah does not give the rabbis this power, does not tell us that we need to follow all of these laws that are nowhere to be found in the text. And so the reality is I pray that more Jews become, and more people become Torah observant. That is what I desire, and I think that it is true to the Torah's vision. That being said, even if the whole world was against me and didn't do this, it doesn't make it wrong, because it means that actually I'm following what I believe and know to be the truth. And what other people are doing bears no impact on what I'm doing.
That's totally incorrect. Of course, commandments were added over the years. Joshua added the commandment not to rebuild Jericho. We have Isaiah refers to the
It wasn't really
commandment
a commandment; it
of
was more like a curse. Whoever
okay, whatever it
does.
is, that's adding something, but he didn't add it to the Torah text. See, the Samaritans, they added the verse. They violated that by adding the verse regarding the temple. We never added anything to the Torah text, but commandments were added. The Bible says that we accepted the festival of Purim, just as we had accepted upon ourselves the fasts that are referred in other places in the Bible. There is a concept of accepting upon yourself to be bound by certain things. Even in the Torah itself, it refers to it. The Jews said, we accept upon ourselves that we don't have to hear everything from God. We can hear it from Moses.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so
I don't think the two are comparable. I don't accept it. I don't accept that Purim is an obligatory holiday. I don't accept that the rabbinic fast days or the even the fast days that were practiced in the times of the Tanakh, I do not believe that they're obligatory. I believe only the laws in the Torah are obligatory. You may not add or subtract to these commandments. And no, people don't have the ability to create binding law for eternity. Only God has that ability. And the reason why Moses is unique is because Moses is literally the mouthpiece for God himself. And he is the servant of God who is sitting there and penning God's words down on paper and saying, this is the word of God right out of his mouth, directly communicating with God. They're in the presence of the entire nation, witnessed by millions of people. This is unprecedented and cannot be compared to anything else.
Roster, I appreciate you coming on for the very polite and respectful conversation. שהקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותך בברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיך לטובה.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
Shalom.
All right, what did I press here? Can you hear me still? Oh, yeah.
I can hear you.
All right, Moji, can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Hey, how are you?
How's it going?
How you doing?
What's your background?
I actually, Yisrael and we actually kind of know each other to a degree. I think he knew my brother, but I'm a observant Jew.
Okay.
Is this Ellie?
Yeah, this is Ellie. How you doing?
Yeah, we were in school together, right?
That's Elazar, my brother.
That's Elazar. Oh, so you're his older brother.
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
yeah. But I like. I mean, I like your videos. I like your. I don't agree with them, but that's okay. I don't have to agree, but I like that you live your life according to your belief. You know, a lot of people have trouble doing that, so I respect
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple things I want, and like a lot of your videos are very interesting. Really, sometimes you bring different ideas that I haven't seen before. But sorry, I have a bad voice, and my son is next to me, so things like might come just in the way.
No
Um,
worries.
basically, you made a video, like I think it's your last video, about the Essenes. I keep running up. The Essenes and tefillin.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It shows that you were saying, I don't know, there was some rabbi speaking, and then you said basically that the Essenes have tefillin, and they added or had something a little bit differently, um, from what I understand. Am I correct? Am I saying anything?
Yeah, what I was saying is that the rabbis claim there's only one specific model in order to fulfill the commandment of have these words as a sign upon your hand and an ornament between your eyes, and they say it has to be the specific model, a square black box made out of straps with leather, a kosher animal written on parchment with a certain pen and a certain paper and all this stuff. And I was just saying that clear evidence from the people who preserved the Dead Sea Scrolls is that they weren't even following the rabbinic model. And my point is that if you wanted to fulfill that commandment, first of all, many people, including in Karaite communities and Christian communities, obviously interpret this to be metaphorical, so they don't even view it as a literal commandment. I happen to not think that there's a problem with making literal, like writing God's words literally on your door, like a mezuzah, or having the words between your eyes and on your hand. I was just saying that the model that the rabbis claim is the only model that you can use is nowhere to be found in the Torah. In the same way, you can have any mezuzah box you want, you can have any kind of tefillin box you want.
Okay, but you kind of concede that there is a tefillin. Am I correct?
I think it's possible to fulfill the commandment both literally and metaphorically.
I don't think that. I think you have to pick a side on that. No,
I don't.
like
No, I don't.
either
I
it's
don't think that
metaphorical.
people. No, no,
Go
I
ahead.
don't think that life is either literal or metaphorical. I think we are literal beings who are spiritual manifestations who are created in the image of God, right? So that's metaphorically speaking. We're not literally God, but we are a physical image of a much broader spiritual concept, right? So the idea here is that if you have physical representations of the spiritual concept, it doesn't take away from it, in my opinion, unless you are wrapping tefillin and you don't think about God at all and you don't think about his commandments at all and you're just doing the act. That's actually less of a fulfillment of the law than if you were just doing it metaphorically. But I don't think that the literal and the metaphorical are detached from each other. For example, when you sit in a sukkah on Sukkot, you sit in a hut, you are literally experiencing what it's like to be in a temporary dwelling place under the protection of God. But you have to remember the Exodus from Egypt and also have the right mindset. So it's both. It's not one or the other.
Okay, but I mean, if someone says it's metaphorical and then they don't put on the tefillin, so they're not doing the obligation. So you have to kind of pick a side on
No,
this.
because I don't think so. Because I again, I
I'm
personally,
listening. Yeah.
yeah, I'm saying I personally see it as having a literal element to it, especially like writing it upon your doorpost and all this stuff. But to me, people that fulfill that metaphorically, I think they're still fulfilling the commandment.
Okay. I mean, I think that's I don't think that's a logical way to go about it. I mean, either it says you have to write it on your, like it says, "Ukshatam liot al yadecha ve'ilot totafot
Hmm.
beinecha," right?
Hmm.
So the logic would say that it's actual something to do, a commandment, right? And nowhere in the Torah does it say anywhere about tefillin. I mean, if you look at the Tehillim, I mean Tanakh, we don't see tefillin anywhere. I've tried to find it, like pretty. I try to look for it, and I was
Hmm.
like at one point questioning like, what am I doing with tefillin, right? But
Hmm.
then I actually put a lot of weight on the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Essenes, and once I found out that they had tefillin, it made me think, okay, so the argument that Judaism is this like second temple, post second temple creation, tefillin is
Well,
specifically in.
neither of us believes that Judaism and its
No,
traditions
no, I know,
are
I know. I'm talking
exclusively
about the Christian
post.
argument. I'm not talking
No,
about your argument.
The Christian argument is not that Judaism concocted in its entirety in the second or third century.
I've heard
That
people say that.
that's
Sorry,
ridiculous.
second
That's
temple.
ridiculous, right? That's
Okay, it's fine.
ridiculous.
It's fine. I'm not.
No, there's not a Christian scholar on earth that believes that.
That's fine. I mean, I guess it's like around Groyper saying like it's a made up religion. It's fine. I'm not trying to
Yeah,
make that argument. I, yeah, they
Groyper's
make.
also
Do you know what I'm
Groyper's
talking
also
about?
telling me if I'm still ethnically Jewish, I can't be a Catholic.
Okay, okay.
Isn't that
I don't want to dwell on that. My point is it made me realize that okay, there was some oral tradition passed for the Essenes to know what to do. And we have that at least to the Second Temple period. I mean, if you want to make it argument that maybe David HaMelech wasn't doing this, that's a fair argument. I have no evidence otherwise. You know what I mean? But
What is the oral tradition that they would wrap verses
the
literally
actual
upon their
tefillin
hand?
box, how
Well,
did they
they're
know to do that?
well, again, it doesn't have to. Their boxes look completely different than the modern boxes. That's my point as well, right? Which is that the color or shape of the box doesn't matter. Even if we were to interpret the commandment literally, and we were to create these frontlets, these ornaments between our eyes, and wrap the words upon as a sign upon our hand, it would still just look like whatever the most convenient way to do that is. And I've seen people make homemade tefillin where they just print out the verses and roll it up and put it in a homemade box. According to the rabbis, they would not be fulfilling the commandment of God. To me, that's ridiculous. Even
Okay,
if we were to take the literal interpretation, all that really matters is that you have the words of God as a sign upon your hand and an ornament between your eyes. The kind of box, the shape of the box, the color of the box doesn't matter. If I had a round box that was red, according to the rabbis, I do not fulfill the commandment. That has no basis in the Torah whatsoever. That's the point I was
I
making.
agree. I agree with the evidence provided that the when someone say doesn't put on the tefillin, makes homemade tefillin. Let's just say they make homemade tefillin. The evidence that we have is that they're only fulfilling the rabbinic way to do it, not what the Torah is necessarily. I mean, it's not against the Torah. It's not like counter to it, right? It could be that Like if they make homemade, I believe that if someone made homemade tefillin, like they go up to heaven, like they can answer God, and it's fine with me. It doesn't bother me. Okay,
Yeah, but
but
again, then you're just more open minded than the rabbis because you're not speaking for the rabbis. According to the
no,
rabbis, you need to
I
fulfill the
personally believe in
commandments.
putting on the rabbinic tefillin. I don't. I'm just saying, but there is what they someone can rely on to say, hey man, I'm making homemade tefillin. Okay, I'm just saying, in that view.
I mean, not something to rely on. There's everything to rely on because the Torah doesn't specify a specific model, right? The only
Right, right.
interesting tradition, the only tradition that I would say is interesting, is in the Dead Sea Scroll Tefillin. You could see that there was 4 compartments, and there's actually 4 paragraphs in the Torah that discuss the commandment of Tefillin. So, an easy way to have these words is to just take out those 4 paragraphs and put it in a box instead of having like an entire Torah scroll on your head, right? So that's
Hey, I
actually
gotta go. I might come back.
Mhm.
I'm listening. Sorry, I
No,
have
no
kids and
worries.
family.
Hmm.
It's good
Yeah,
talking to you. Hey, God bless
absolutely.
you.
No
God
worries.
bless.
All right,
God bless.
you too.
Mhm.
Bye. Sorry, I'm listening on the other end. All right.
Go
No
for it.
worries. All right, I'm just going to read a couple of these. Somebody commented, Hero Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Yes,
Amen.
the Lord is
Amen.
one. I would say that because you guys are Christian, that by extension you are Jewish because you believe in Judaism and its fulfillment. Thank you. And then, but does the Catholic idea of revelation in scripture and tradition have its roots in ancient Judaism having written an oral Torah? Yes, but not in the way described by the rabbis. Like it's a completely different claim. It doesn't have the same presuppositional beliefs to authority. All right, we got John in brackets Catholic. That doesn't sound like you're an observant Jew. Unless it's your last name. It's an unfortunate name for an Orthodox Jew.
Hello, is he there?
John? Here's Johnny. Nope. All right, well, John probably went away from his...
Catholicowitz.
John Catholicovitz.
Yes, can you hear me?
Catholicstein. Yes, we can hear you, John Catholicstein.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I'm not Jewish. I just wanted to pop in really quick, just give a one very quick comment and I'll hop off. I don't want to take too much time. I heard
I, I
some
should
comments in
I
passing.
should tell you
Oh,
no
sorry.
because it's for Orthodox Jews or traditional Jews, but there's nobody waiting behind you. So for now,
I'm sorry.
I'll let it slide.
I'm sorry, very quickly. I just wanted to kind of say something very quick. I heard some passing comments before about kind of Christianity. You were kind of giving a response, I believe, your co-host here, um, to some of the Jews that were brought up. Um, my understanding of the Catholic faith is that we do have the sacred tradition and that it was entrusted to the magisterium to a centralized authority, which is the Catholic Church. Saint Peter, who is that patriarch, um, and of course, so this magisterium, they're here to safeguard and to be a witness, and um, they are that centralized authority. So I just heard something before that you kind of denied that, but in the Catholic faith, we do believe that, and I just want to say that for the viewers. Of
Who
course, we
denied that?
have. I believe your co-host here is his name Isaac or
Yeah,
Izzy.
he's a Torah only Jew. He believes in like a Karaite-esque form of Judaism. He's not a Christian.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
that's why. Yeah, we have
Oh, okay.
differing beliefs, me and him. It's just an interesting kind of conversation to have to specifically address these claims of rabbinic Judaism.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to ask a quick question, if you don't mind. If you don't mind.
sure.
You just said something to the last guest that we as Catholics don't believe the sacred tradition is quite analogous to the rabbinic kind of oral Torah. My understanding is that it's quite analogous, and the only difference is they were not the entrusted authority by Moses, even though they claim that Moses gave them the authority. We believe that that never happened.
No,
Um,
I don't think
but
that's correct.
oh, really?
I know that people say that because it's like a nice like ecumenical claim to make, but it's actually
Mhm.
not. It's not found. It's not on the same structure, right? So the rabbis claim, just to put this into perspective, the rabbis that existed obviously a lot longer than the 2nd century, but they claim that their
Mhm.
traditions and system, in the form that they codified in the 2nd and 3rd century, is a tradition that goes back to Moses.
Mhm.
Okay. The claim of
Right.
the Catholic Church having a magisterium that is entrusted to the faith rests also on the idea that God, Jesus Christ, literally entrusted that to the apostles at that
Mhm.
time, not an
Mhm.
anachronistic claim afterwards to presuppose their tradition as valid. Right? It's a very different basis for the claim, and there's more to it than just that.
I see. I
Yeah.
understand. But in terms of our sacred tradition, though, our oral tradition as Catholics that we believe extends back to Moses at Sinai, the first, well, instance we could say of divine revelation that was handed through our forefathers until today, and especially the teachings of Christ, which added to that deposit of faith that we have, that's been handed down orally as well, as we hear from Saint Papias, that the faith was transmitted by this living voice of the people. So I think that that also kind of points to, the existence of this
No,
oral
that there
tradition
is
even
that there
within
is a
Catholicism.
leadership structure, that the office exists.
Sure,
Yes, but not who
sure,
that office is, what the level of their authority is, and how they came to possess it. Those are all completely different between Rabbinic Judaism and Catholicism.
sure, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
But in terms of the oral Torah, basically, and the true oral Torah being within Catholicism and not in Rabbinic Judaism, kind of thing, like teachings that go beyond the mere scripture, right? That's what we
Right.
hear from Saint John, is that there were many things that Christ taught in those 3 years that weren't written.
Right.
And we
Do you see
believe
the
certain
comment? Do you see
sayings.
the comment on
You
the
know,
screen? Because it sums it up, kind of.
let me see. You have heard it said, but I say to you.
Right. Yeah. So the idea is that yes, there's an office that exists for certain things, and that Jesus sets that on the apostles as fulfilling that office. But Catholics would not claim that there's something, that Moses said to Joshua about some hidden law that we're supposed to follow that we didn't know about, right? Until some guy in the second century told us about it, right? Like, hey, by the way, there's this secret
um,
law. It's all founded on the Catholic approach to things centers around the life and ministry of Jesus, the death and crucifixion and ascension of Jesus, right?
Sure. Yeah, and we would never say that anything was secret. Obviously, everything in divine revelation was publicly revealed to the apostles, the disciples,
Right.
and whoever was witness to the divine teachings. But I think everyone would agree, every Catholic would agree, every Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, Oriental would agree that there were teachings that weren't written in Scripture, that the faith goes beyond the mere Scripture and what's contained in it.
Right, but not
And
laws from the time of Moses.
from the Old Testament period
Right.
in general,
Concepts that have existed through the Jewish people that have carried on, but we're not talking about like,
perhaps.
oh, by the way, there's this actual secret thing that Moses said to Joshua that we didn't know about
Yeah.
until this priest in the fourth century told us about it.
Yeah, so certain particulars that's kind of contained in their Mishnah, well, we're not exactly sure. Things like that. There
Right.
could be inventions, and there was a corruption of the faith by the rabbis.
I'm
But
just saying it's a completely different claim as to
you know,
where the authority comes from, what the authority entails, and how unbroken it is before the time that Jesus institutes the apostles in fulfilling those roles.
I actually think it's a quite analogous claim, though. No, kind of the delegation of authority to Moses to the priests. I think to the sons of
Right. It's
Aaron, right, and
exactly the claim of the Catholic Church is it's a priestly office instituted by God,
Mhm. But a magisterial one, right, in regard to teaching, to the teaching
contrary to the
authority.
rabbinic tradition, which is that God no longer plays a part in our interpretation and we can supersede him.
Oh no, no, no.
Right.
I don't even believe they claim that, but that is
That's
definitely what they
it's a
do.
it's a very clearly written story in the Talmud where God overrules the rabbis and they say no, we rule by majority.
It's Bava
Oh,
Metzia
I think
59b.
I don't think you understand what rabbinic Judaism's claims are to be making them analogous to the Catholic Church. And
I
and
wouldn't.
honestly, if you're not educated on what rabbinic Judaism actually claims, as a Catholic, you should probably be careful with making the comparison.
Right, right. I'm not legitimizing their authority. I'm not giving any credence to anything that they claim.
No, you
I'm
you
just
don't even
saying that,
understand the basics of what they claim, and you're calling them analogous, which I think is problematic because you don't know what they're claiming to be calling it analogous to.
well, in that they claim to sit on the chair of Moses, as we've heard from Christ, right? That they claim that they have this authority to bind these restrictions on the people in regards to the law.
That's
It's
not that's
halakha.
not what it says in Matthew 23 at all, actually.
No, no. I'm. I'm adding to Christ's word.
Right.
I'm explaining, kind of
Right.
giving context to his
Yeah.
words there.
Yeah.
But
Right. I would say
okay,
this,
if
and
that's
I don't mean to be rude. It's so skewed that I would almost seem like you're not a Catholic saying you're Catholic to try to add validity to Judaism, the way that it
no,
comes
I'm not.
across. That's what it comes
I'm really
across
not.
as because of how badly you seem to understand what Rabbinic Judaism claims.
So you are Catholicburg, huh?
So you are Catholicburg. We were right.
No, no.
All right. Have a good evening.
But
There's
all right,
somebody
thank you for the
somebody
time.
waiting.
God bless. See.
All right.
Where do we stand?
Ari, can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay, awesome. What's your
Hello,
background?
hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes. What's your background?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear
can.
us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Can
All
you hear
right.
me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? You can see me talking, so which means you must know whether or not you can hear me. Right. So we can obviously hear you
Hello, hello.
because we're responding to you. All right. Try to go out and come back in.
Testing, testing. Do we have anyone back there?
Hold on a second. 1 second. Give me 1 sec. Guys, give me one moment. I want to do something funny. Where's my camera? How do I turn this? Yeah.
Hello, hello, everybody. Am I supposed to sing or something? Strangers in the night, exchanging glances. Part Italian. So I have to sing O Sole Mio. Che bella cosa,
Ma giornata
giornata
sole.
sole.
Thought I couldn't sing.